Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Pecan, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. Slattery'sGarage.ie.
Good morning. Welcome along to Tip Today. 1800 938 007. Our free phone number. Won't cost you if you'd like to make a call to us. And Leanne is producing. Coming up on the show this morning, our sports editor Paul Carroll will look back at the weekend sporting action in just a few moments' time. A council budget meeting collapses without agreement. Navigating grief around Christmas time. Francis O'Hanlon from FOH Finance will be here to talk to us about money matters this Christmas. Thomas Conway has the global news, and our relationship expert Susan O'Donoghue will discuss the cost of living and how it affects us emotionally. So all of that and much, much more on the way. We have a great competition for you as well, and that I'll tell you about a little bit later on. You can text and WhatsApp 083 311 3311. You can email tiptoday at tipfm.com. Let's have a look at what's making headlines and what's making the front pages on some of your newspapers today. The Irish Independent, the main story there, Mary Regan tells us that social media companies such as Facebook and TikTok will be held liable for financial fraud that happens on their platforms under new EU-wide laws. And the laws have been described as a seismic shift in accountability by the Dublin MEP Regina Doherty, who spoke in favour of the measures at the European Parliament. The Irish Examiner, it's dominated by a gorgeous photograph indeed. And it's a photograph of a lady sitting beside a wall of clocks in McCurtain Street in Cork, and her name is Sally Stokes, and she holds a completed numeral reflecting decades of gold-leafing expertise, but it's the photograph that's very, very special indeed. Also on the Examiner today, we're reading that universities will be urged to negotiate directly with private accommodation providers to house students as part of a new third-level housing strategy, hoping to deliver 42,000 beds. Also on the Examiner today, hard-pressed consumers are scrambling to secure better energy deals amid a surge in the cost of living as the number of households switching supplier rose to its highest levels since 2022. New figures are showing. The Irish Times, lead story on the Times today, plans to remove the name of a former president of Israel from a public park in Rathgar in South Dublin are to be suspended following a weekend of national and international pressure on Dublin City Council. Very interesting story on the Times today. The devolution of policing to Stormont under the Belfast Agreement has failed the Police Service of Northern Ireland, which now has a dangerously low number of officers and a major funding crisis, its Chief Constable John Boucher has said. And also much coverage across the newspapers of President Zelensky's visit to Ireland tomorrow. The Irish Daily Mail and their front page story: 7 female paramedics have come forward to lift the lid on an alleged sexual predator in the service who they claim has been drugging colleagues for almost a decade to abuse them. Can you believe? That's a look at what's making headlines today. If you'd like to make comment on any of that, 083 311 3311. Now it's time to look back at the weekend sporting action. Glad to be joined, as usual, by our sports editor Paul Carroll from our Nina desk. Good morning to you, Paul.
Morning, Fran. How are you?
I'm very well indeed, and good to talk to you today. GAA, first of all, Upper Church Drumban are the Munster Intermediate Hurling Champions, Paul.
Yeah, just the third ever team from Tipperary to win the Munster Intermediate Hurling final, Fran, and they done it in one-way fashion for a finish, but it was a game with lots of talking points. But the headline is Upper Church Drumban are the Munster champions. At 320 to 15 points it finished up in the Gaelic grounds against O'Callaghan Mills. Upper Church were underdogs going into the game, and it was a real 50-50 battle the first half. It was 12 points to 11. There were some brilliant scores on both sides. Maybe the most memorable score was Niall Grant for Upperchurch, his long-range score after a reverse kind of backhand hand pass from Paddy Phelan in the middle of the field for Upperchurch Drumban. So 12 points to 11, Upperchurch are up by a point at half-time, and you really couldn't wait for the second half to get going. Second half does get going, and about 7 or 8 minutes into it, we have this wild passage of play, Fran, where everything is kind of let go for about 30 seconds, and there's heavy tackles flying in. There's 50-50 calls that the ref just decides to play on, and both sets of supporters are getting high-tempered with the fact that they think they should have a free. It's play on, then the other team think they should have a free, and then there's an instant where the wing forward for O'Callaghan Mills just high tackles. I think it was Keith Ryan for Upperchurch coming out with the ball. He's already carded. He's already been yellow carded, so it was a clear second yellow for him. So he receives a second yellow card, receives a red card. He's sent off. In protest, one of the other O'Callaghan Mills players just is given out to the referee. He gets a yellow card for dissent. He is not able to keep his mouth closed. He continues giving out to the referee, I'm presuming, and the ref gives him a second yellow card in the space of 10 seconds, gives him a red card. So in the space of a 60-second period, O'Callaghan Mills have 2 men sent off, and they're down to 13, and it made things very difficult. And Upperchurch, in fairness to him, it sounds funny in a way, but it's difficult for a few minutes when you're playing against 13 just to decide how you're going to play. In fairness to him, they got it together, and Paddy Phelan, Conor Fahy and substitute Colm O'Regan got the goals. And then there was another red card late on for Gary Cooney, the corner forward for O'Callaghan Mills. He kind of got a tap on the head from Aaron Ryan underneath a high ball, and just retaliated and just kind of lost the head for a moment, and he got a red card. But for Upperchurch, just a brilliant win for them. They're absolutely delighted. Speaking to Liam Dunphy, the manager, after, just so happy with his team. He's a Roscrea native, but been with coaching with Upperchurch for 4 or 5 years. Himself and James McGrath from Toomevara. So it's into an All-Ireland semi-final now for Upperchurch Drumban. That will be against either Ratoath of Meath or Danesfort of Kilkenny. They're in the Leinster final next Saturday, and it's an All-Ireland semi-final, and they're 60 minutes away from Upperchurch Drumban gracing the field in Croke Park for an All-Ireland final. So hugely exciting times. That All-Ireland semi-final will be played before Christmas, the weekend of December 20th and 21st. So much to look forward to, and I'm sure it was a great weekend in Upperchurch.
I'm certain it was indeed. Another Tipperary team winning Munster honours as well.
Yeah, and Camogie St. Patrick's beat Castlemartyr of Cork in the this was the Munster Junior B Munster Camogie final. Incredible win. They were down 3-5 to 2-1 at half time, St. Pat's, and they came back and won it 3-10 to 3-5. So brilliant second half performance there from St. Patrick's, who've had a great year as a club. And I think I mentioned it before, Fran. I'd often say that they're a club in Drangan, but it was brought to my attention from some people from the club that it's Drangan and Clooneen. So we'll get that spot on. But they've had a great year in multiple codes, and the Camogie team are continuing that on with a brilliant Munster final win.
The lineup for the County Junior B hurling final is set up as well.
At long last, Fran, yeah, this is the dragged out County Junior B Hurling Championship this year, but the semi-finals finally took place on Saturday afternoon. Thurles Sarsfields beat Solihull 327 to 110, and the Silvermines, who had a good weekend, beat Carrick Swan 219 to 12 points. So the county final will be the Silvermines against Thurles Sarsfields in the Junior B county final there. So we're finally down to the last two there.
Plenty of under-21 action around the county.
Yeah, that's an understatement, Fran. There was loads of games in terms of finals, semi-finals. We'll run you down through some of the results. On Saturday, we had the South Under-21B hurling final. This one went to extra time, Feathered winning by a couple of points in the end, 124 to 219 against Knockmill Down Gales. That was a double header in Feathertown Park. They also had the South Under-21 A football final. Big win for Mull Rovers. They beat Clonmel Commercials 217 to 11 points there. So a big win, as I said, for Mull Rovers. Elsewhere on Saturday, with the mid under 21A hurling championship semi-final. Holy Cross beating my Carkey Burris 322 to 314. Loads of talent on both sides there, but particularly that Holy Cross team. And also on Saturday, the North under 21B hurling semi-final. Burgess beat Killadangan 113 to 15 points. David Neelan with the all-important goal there. Then on Sunday, loads of games again will start in the North Division. The both under 21A hurling semi-finals are on. Silvermines beat Ballina by a single point, 311 to 116. That was after extra time. Luke O'Brien, big goal there for the Mines in the first period of extra time. Also 1 point win for Bursalee against Toomevara in the other semi-final. Bursalee 217 at Toomevara 22 points. In the West Division, we had the West under 21B hurling semi-final. Knockavilla Doneski Kickham's beat Aero Ganacarthy and Emily 23 points to 8. So a big win there for Knockavilla. Elsewhere in the West under 21A hurling semi-final, Golden Kilfeacle with a big win over Cashel King Cormac's 17 points to 14. That one finished up. We also had the North under 21B hurling semi-final. Cllrs 1 McDonough's were 216 to 111 winners over Newport. And last couple, Fran, the mid under 21A hurling semi-final, Thurles Sarsfields 228 to 317 winners over Borlahan Duala. And finally, in the West under 21B hurling semi-final, you had Kappa White Gales, big win for them over Latin Cullen Gales, 621 to 220. So loads of finals taking place in the under 21 grades next weekend.
And to rugby then, Paul, and Munster back in action over the weekend.
Yeah, unfortunately suffered their first loss of the season. So this was on in Thomond Park on Saturday evening, just a stone's throw away from where we were for the Upper Church Drum Band game. And you could see the lights, the bright lights of Thomond Park from the Gaelic grounds. But unfortunately for Munster, they were beaten by the Stormers, South African team, 27 points to 21. Munster were 21 points to 6 up at half time, but didn't score in the second half. The Munster did score a late try though and kicked a conversion to take the lead, but incredibly it was brought back on the TMO, and the TMO had spotted a knock on in the build up, but usually you don't see the conversion being taken and then it goes back to the TMO. Usually that happens before the conversion is taken. So frustrating loss for Munster, but they've had a good start to the season, so hopefully they can get back on track. Champions Cup coming up down the line in the coming weeks as well, so a disappointing defeat though all the same, 27 points to 21.
And local rugby as well, Paul?
Yeah, the AIL continues, Fran, and unfortunately for Nina Ormond, their struggles in Division 1A continues. They had a really difficult test on Saturday, going up to Dublin to play the league leaders St Mary's, and that finished up 49 points to 15 in favour of the Dublin team. Also difficult away or home tie for Cashel in Division 2A. They were beaten at home in Spafield by Greystones, 25 points to 19. That finished up. But the Clonmel Rugby Club are continuing their brilliant form. They've now won 5 in a row in Division 2C. Perfect. They beat Middleton 29 points to 21, and that's been a place they've struggled in recent years down in Middleton. Middleton hadn't lost at home this year, but big win for Clonmel, 29 points to 21, and they're now top of the table in Division 2C after that bonus point win. So Thomond were beaten, the team who were in first place. Clonmel beat them last weekend. Thomond lost again over the weekend, and now Clonmel got that 5th win in a row. So Clonmel top of Division 2C and have really high ambitions for this season.
Fantastic. Lots of local soccer over the weekend too, Paul.
Yeah, we'd one game in the Tipperary Cup, Kerr Park 0, St Michael's 5, so St Michael's progressed there. The TSDL Premier League, Cullen Latin 1, Peak Villa 4, Clonmel Town 0, Cashel Town 1, so a big away win there for Cashel Town, and Clonmel Celtic 0, Toomal Burris 0. In the NTNDL Premier League, BT Harps 10, Sally Park 0, so huge win there on Friday evening for BT Harps. Ardcroney 1, Moneygall 1, Holy Cross 2, Shinrone 7, and Ballamackie 1, Rare Cross 1. So BT Harps closing the gap there on Ardcroney at the top of the NTNDL Premier League.
Tipperary's Orla O'Dwyer and Australian rules.
Yeah, she was in the AFLW Grand Final, so the biggest game in Australian rules. Spoke to Orla on the show last week, and just very excited for the game, but knew they were going to be up against it. The Brisbane Lions taking on the North Melbourne Kangaroos. The Kangaroos had won it last year, There were 26 games unbeaten going into the game on Saturday morning, and it was another win for North Melbourne Kangaroos. 56-16 was the final score. 27 consecutive wins for them and 2 years unbeaten now. So unfortunately for Orla Dwyer on the losing side for 2 years in a row in the AFLW Grand Final, but from her 6 or 7 seasons down in Australia, she's been to 5 Grand Finals and won 2 of them. So had another brilliant season, just coming up a bit against a bit of a juggernaut there in the Kangaroos.
Temporary interest then in the Lakeside World Darts Championship. A good outcome there as well, Paul.
Yeah, there was a big excitement kind of around Nina for Stephen Rosney. He's made his debut at the Lakeside World Darts Championship, so a very kind of historically significant tournament in the world of darts, and lots of excitement, as I said, locally to see how he'd get on. And Chuckles, as he's known as, won 3-0 in his last 64 match. That was against Scotland's Jim McEwen, and played really well. Didn't show any kind of real nerves of playing on the big stage for the first time. Won 3-0, averaged around 85, and he'll go into the last 32 now to play at Thomas Youngens, and that's on Wednesday at around 6 p.m. So keep an eye out for that. But well done to Nina's own Stephen Rosney.
I think that's going to be on S4C as well. I think they're
I'm not sure what channel that's on, but it is S4C. Yeah, the first couple of rounds were on the YouTube stream, so that's where I was watching. So I'll have to find out what channel exactly S4C is, Fran. But I'll be tuning in on Wednesday evening.
Very good. To look ahead, then, anything we should be keeping an eye on, Paul?
Yeah, of course, this time of the year it's quieter than normal in terms of sport, but still lots to look forward to. I mentioned all those under-21 finals that are coming up. The AIL rugby continues next weekend. We'll have local soccer. Also during the week, there's the Hearty Cup of Camogie, shall we call it, the Munster Senior Schools Camogie. Some big games. The 2 Thurles schools in Ursuline and Presentation are playing each other on Wednesday, so that's something of note. That is a knockout game. And also a quick plug, friend, for my own show next Friday night. I'm going to be sitting down with Jason Ford, Darren McCarthy and Jake Morris, so to talk back on the year that was for Tipperary. So that's coming up Friday evening at 6 o'clock if anyone is inclined to tune into that.
I'm sure there will be big interest in that as always. Paul, pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Fran.
Thank you. That's our sports editor, Paul Carroll, there from our Nina studio this morning. 1800 938 007.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Hook On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Hook On. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
When I was looking at the front pages of the newspapers this morning, one of the stories is, right across the newspapers, in fact, the report on the renaming of Herzog Park had been withdrawn even from the agenda of tonight's Dublin City Council meeting due to an administrative oversight, and it follows a day of political tensions that became the focus of even international attention there on that. But John Wirt was on to us from Thurles, and he says, good morning, Fran. In relation to Dublin and some people who would like to change their history, we had that in the early days of St. Mary's International Garden of Remembrance in Thurles, where a few people tried to change our history. Our motto is, all are remembered with dignity and respect, regardless of who they fought for. And yeah, I always think it's with great care we should view history through the prism of what we know now, if you know what I mean, or what our thoughts are. Now it can be very dangerous to do so. Today, December 1st, signals the beginning of the Christmas season for many, a special time filled with family and festivities and joy and the like. However, for others, it can be a time of loneliness and longing, especially after the loss of a loved one. Well, a great friend to the show over the years, Angie McGrath from Cashel, says that grief is a topic very close to her heart, and she joins me now. Angie, good morning to you.
Hi, friend. How are you?
I'm well, Angie. Lovely to talk to you today. You said when your dad was passing away, you described yourself as feeling overwhelmed in some way. Will you explain that to me, Angie?
Well, following on, it was from the Dear Phil section of the programme, and the person, I could nearly feel their upset and being overwhelmed, even just from the letter. And when somebody is very unwell and you're, especially a family member, it's very hard. I think you're very hard on yourself and you expect an awful lot from yourself. And sometimes you're just not able to give that. And that's something that you have to be able to forgive yourself for.
Yeah, because in the letter to Phil, Angie, the person said, I always imagined I would be at my father's bedside. It would all be calm and peaceful, but I can't bring myself to go there. I find I'm spending less and less time with him and doing anything I can not to be in the room with him. So you feel for this person, obviously.
I do indeed, because of course those feelings are so overwhelming, I mean, when my own father and mother were sick and dying, you want to run away, of course you do. You're looking at the person that raised you, that was the strong person, always there for you, always the problem solver, everything else, and then suddenly they're not anymore, they're not able to be anymore. And that's very overwhelming for anybody. But I will say, and I did say in my comment, you have to steel yourself. You have to be there for the person, because what we tend to do, what I tended to do was see just the illness and what was happening with the illness and everything, and kind of forgetting that that's still your person, that's still your parent or your whoever. The person, whoever is sick and who's dying. So we tend to kind of put it down to, it's a cancer or it's whatever the illness may be. And I think you kind of have to sit back and see the bigger picture and not forget that that's still that person.
Yeah, and I knew your dad. Well, I knew your mum as well, but I knew your dad. A fine, big, strong man and independent man.
Certainly was a big personality friend. That's for
absolutely.
Sure.
And to see somebody like that then in a bed in their last hours or last days, it must be incredibly difficult,
It is incredibly difficult, and it's incredibly hard to reconcile what's happening to the person with the person that you knew. And that, as I said, my father, as you know, Fran, was quite a big personality.
Yeah.
If he was in the room, he was there.
Sure.
He was no shrinking violet, that's for sure. So even in his last days and hours even, there was a very funny story, Fran. The priest, my mother asked him, would he like the priest to come in and give him his last rites? Now, my father wasn't a bit religious or anything like that, but
yes.
I'd say out of just something else to do, he was like, yeah, no bother, bring him in. So he came in anyway, and the priest gave him the last rites, whatever. I left the room. And when I came back, the priest was just leaving, and he said to my father, is there anything else I can do for you, Mr. McGrath? And my father goes, oh, I'm not Mr. McGrath. My father was Mr. McGrath. I'm Willie. And the priest said to him, oh, you never lost your sense of humour anyway. And he said, no, the last thing to go is the sense of humour. So he was very aware of what was happening and what was, what was going on. And I think we do tend to do that. We tend to, when someone gets sick, just see the illness and see what's happening around the illness and forget the person is still that person,
Of course. Did he help you through this as well himself, just by even his sense of humour and the like, Angie?
Do you know, sometimes, Fran, that was kind of even maybe a little harder, that he wasn't acting sick, if you get me. Like, he never, even though he was very sick for about 2 years, and then in the last stages, like, yourself, a lot of families have been touched by cancer, say nearly every family, and, it was never sort of discussed. It was all sort of peripheral talk and that sort of thing. And I suppose in a way that's probably not great, but also it's just easier, isn't it, if you don't discuss the elephant in the room sort of thing. But having the crack right up to the last couple of hours, Fran, and Blackgarden people, and he had a great sense of humour, mad for Blackgarden and messing and what have you. Even the priest giving him his last rites, imagine. But,
very good, yeah. And
I
Angie,
sorry.
I beg your pardon, was your own feelings at the end and your own attitude, was it different to how you thought you might behave, if you know what I mean, Angie?
Oh, 100%.
Was it? Yeah.
I think we watch too much movies and too much television, and you see somebody get sick and they get a little bit worse, and then this sort of serene ending to it all, and that's kind of obviously what happens on TV, but that's not the reality at all. And it is very hard to see somebody suffer and decline and all the awful things that happen, and then all the medical side of it and everything. Of course, that does it wrecks your head, so to speak, Fran. It does. It's very hard, and I could see that the person in that letter going through all those emotions. You know, it's not easy.
Yeah, and also in the letter, I'm presuming it's a woman. I don't know why, but I'm presuming it is. It says, my sister has noticed the way I am and tried to coax me to stay for longer with my father, but I just can't do it. I feel like a coward and I feel like I'm letting him down. So can I ask you for your advice to this person? What would you say, Angie?
Oh, it's funny, friend, that I actually kind of thought from the letter that it might be a fella, to be fair.
Did you? Yeah.
I did, because and again now, this is generalisation, and I'm not saying that every man is like this, so please don't anybody ring in to kill me over this, but generally speaking, the daughters are going to be the ones inside doing all that's to be done, and the men of the family tend to be able to kind of not walk away, but separate themselves a little bit from it.
I think you're right, Angie. I think you're right about that.
Yeah, and I know that again, not putting my brothers down, every one of them were great in their own way, but I do think the burden falls to the daughters, and it really does. And I would have took from the letter that it might have been a fella. But now, it might not be either, and I'm not saying that all guys are like that either. But, I think in our case, anyway, my brothers were able to pop in and out, and able to kind of separate themselves a little bit, whereas myself and my sister were there 24/7 and doing all that had to be done, and
I think it's fair comment, Angie. I think most people would agree with that.
It was hilarious because a couple of them would have said, "Oh, I'm just not able for this," and I'm like, "Well, no offence, I don't come pre-packed able for stuff like this either, but you just have to steel yourself sometimes and just get on with it, and that's it."
Of course. And the milestones, I mean, Christmas is a huge milestone, is it not, Angie?
Well, actually, it was my mother's second anniversary yesterday.
Was it? Oh, my God.
Is the 12th of January, so Christmas is a bit of a, Christmas wouldn't be the most amazing time. But again, like I was just saying, so you have to, my mother and father wouldn't have wanted us all, not having a Christmas because they passed around Christmas time or stuff, But I do think though time also helps. The old saying, time is a healer. It does. A little bit of distance does give you more perspective as well. And you do tend to be able to put things like that, compartmentalise certain things. But you never forget, of course you don't. You don't ever forget the person that's gone.
So to the letter writer then calling him or herself a coward and the like, we have to be a bit more gentle with ourselves, I suppose.
I think we're very hard on ourselves.
Yeah.
I think we're very, very hard on ourselves. And I do think we tend to look outside of ourselves as in what will, the neighbour think or the cousin think or even the family member think. And I do think sometimes it's really hard. We're faced with situations that are difficult and that aren't usual, and you can't predict how you'll react to something.
Yeah, can I ask you a strange question, Angie? When you lose both parents, are you different then in some way?
Absolutely. 100%. You're never the same. There's something about both parents gone that has even then when you're an adult. Obviously I was an adult when both my parents passed away, but it does, it changes the family dynamic. And again, a funny thing, Fran, my brothers, when my mother passed away, one of my brothers, who shall remain nameless, even though you know who I'm talking about, said, "Oh, you're the head of the family now I'm the youngest by a mile." and you're the head of the family now. And I was like, who are we, the Sopranos? I'm like, the head of the family, right, okay. I'll be the head of the family now.
Very good, very good.
In other words, the person who's going to take on all responsibility, Fran.
Well, you see, you always strike me, Angie, as somebody who takes on responsibility anyway.
And I probably do, Fran, to be fair. I think that's my my nature, is to kind of, that is my nature. I do have to have a little word with myself sometimes.
I can well imagine, indeed. Well, look, you look after yourself, Angie. Always really good to talk to you, and thanks for the chat this morning.
Thanks very much, and have a lovely Christmas.
And many happy returns to you as well, Angie. Thank you. That's Angie McGrath there from Cashel. 1800 938 007. I'm told by William from Dalla that S4C, that's Stephen Rosney's darts match, will be on that platform. But William tells me it's a Welsh channel and it can be found on free-to-air channels or on the Skybox as well.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
If it matters to you, it matters to us. Call Tip Today on 1-800-938-007.
Crunch budget meeting of Tipperary County Council collapsed without agreement after hours of tense exchanges and a disputed adjournment as well. The annual budget meeting got underway in Nina on Friday last, but by 4 p.m. councillors couldn't agree on a course of action. Proposed in the budget was a 5% increase in commercial rates for the local authority to continue to fund their services. Councillor Liam Browne joins me now. Good morning to you, Liam.
Good morning, Frank.
And thanks for your time this morning. You've described the meeting as a disgrace, Liam. You're calling out what happened at the meeting. Where did it all go wrong?
It was, Frank. What happened at the end of the meeting was disgraceful, to be quite honest. Look, just to let your listeners kind of understand where we go with the budget. We've been having budgetary discussions for the last two and a half months, since September. So the council have been coming to us and they've been having a number of workshops and telling us what we need to raise in 2026 to pay for the services that are provided by Tipperary County Council. And you put that against what you get in the grants from national government in the budget that they give out. So, that's done over the period of 2 months. We get a chance to sit down with the different departments, discuss what they intend to spend the money on, how they intend to raise it. And then we come to a budget meeting and, we've got plenty of view of what they intend to do and where the money is going to be spent. We went through that again on Friday, another 6-hour meeting on Friday from 10 o'clock to 4 o'clock. And when that, all the questions had been taken, we were asked, to vote on the budget. First thing happened was one of the Fine Gael councillors stood up and told the executive that, they didn't feel that they had enough of their councillors that were willing to vote for the budget, so they wanted an extra 15 minutes to have a discussion about it. Now, when they've had 2.5 months to discuss this, I don't know what they were going to figure out in 15 minutes. But, they said that they didn't want to engage. After that, the leader of the Fianna Fáil group on the council, Councillor Michael Smith, he stood up, and to be quite honest, and this is nothing personal against Michael, he's a good councillor, but he gave a kind of a mealy-mouthed response to the budget where they wanted to maybe increase the amount of rebate on the discount, early payment discount, from 5% to 6% or 6% to 7%, which would have saved 0.001% of the budget. But they were willing to vote for it afterwards. They went away into a discussion, a huddle themselves as well. The rest of the councillors outside of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael were left twiddling their thumbs. We had no clue what was being said. We had no clue what was being proposed. As I said, Fianna Fáil wanted changes to the budget that none of us knew before we went in that morning. They hadn't told anybody about it. And when they came out, they took the first chance they got and adjourned the meeting, and off they went for another week. So none of us knew.
Did anything emerge at the meeting that was different to what people knew on the run-up to it? Because you say they had 2 months to consult on this and to discuss this. Did anything new come up at the meeting about the budget?
No, Fran, it didn't. And that's the point. I mean, we could have sat down and, if Fianna Fáil came up with, I think, 4 proposals that made very, very tiny differences to what was being proposed by the council. If they'd had any manners, they might have gone to the rest of the councillors who weren't in Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael and said, look, we're going to propose these, maybe this way, get it over the line. Didn't tell anybody. Stood up, said, so we're willing to vote for a budget if this is put in. They knew well that Fine Gael weren't going to vote for the budget. I don't know why. From what I believe, Fine Gael were struggling with maybe one councillor who wasn't going to vote for the budget. They went for 15 minutes meeting, they came back with 4 councillors who now weren't going to vote for the budget, even though nothing had changed in the meantime. 15, 20 of us were left in the chamber wondering what was going on inside in the 2 huddles. They came back and, called for an adjournment of the meeting, and off they went. Now, it wasn't they called for the adjournment of the meeting. It was Councillor Dunne from Sinn Féin called for the adjournment, and he called for the adjournment on the basis that we hadn't a clue what was being said, we hadn't a clue what was being negotiated. So how could we sit down with a budget book that we've been looking at for 2 months, have it changed in 15 minutes, and then expected to vote on it?
Davy was on Zoom, I gather. Were you on Zoom as well, Liam?
I was on Zoom as well, and I mean...
So was it difficult to know what was happening if you were on Zoom?
Sure, we hadn't a clue what was happening, in fact. I mean, there was no clue. I mean, we were left inside in the chamber. We could speak to each other. We did speak to each other. At some point, some of our microphones were muted, so we couldn't speak to each other, but we turned them back on. But the Fine Gael group and Fianna Fáil group had disappeared from the chamber. I mean, these are the people who have the pact, as they call it. These are the people who are supposed to be standing up and providing leadership to the council. They're the very first people who will talk to the likes of myself as an independent councillor and call me populist when I suggest anything. What they were trying to do was completely and utterly populist, man. They were trying to pretend that they were going to, stand behind business people and stand behind, save them money and how hard the rates were hitting them. In the end of the day, there was going to be no change to the increase in rates, the 5% increase in rates. Neither party came in with an alternative which was going to make that any less. The small thing they did do was change, as I said, change an early payment discount from, I can't remember, was it 5 to 6% or 6 to 7%, would have saved at an absolute maximum, fine, €12 a week to a business.
Yeah, it's from 6 to 7%. But you see, businesses are so tight now. Would anything make a difference to them at this point?
The businesses are tight, fine, not because of what Tipperary County Council are putting on them on rates. Businesses are tight, fine, because the amount that central government are putting onto them in carbon taxes, in energy cost increases, in administration increases, in minimum wage increases, in expecting every business to now sign up to auto enrolment insurance businesses. And let me give the Fine Gael councillor Tom Atchison some credit here. Tom stood up and spoke on behalf of the Fine Gael delegation at the beginning of the decision-making process. And he said, we know we're talking out of both sides of our mouth, that, we're trying to save money here in Tipperary while national government are keeping costs onto businesses at national level. So I'll give him credit for that. At least Tom was honest enough to admit that. The Fianna Fáil group didn't admit that at all. But the reality is, Fran, is the national spending has increased by 94% since 2015. But the amount of money which has gone to local authorities has not increased at the same level, which means local authorities are now expected to make up the gap. Lack of funding from national government, especially in the last couple of years when the inflationary costs of providing a road have denuded the budget in Tipperary by nearly €3 million. We're now expected to make up the cost. The business of Tipperary are expected to make up the cost of the failure of national government.
So are you saying to me, the proposal of 5%, are we going to be looking at 5% every year then?
If they're going to be honest, and let me be honest with the businesses of Tipperary, because I don't think the 2 main parties are going to be honest about it. We have been told by Tipperary County Council that because of the decrease in the council budgets expected over the next 3 or 4 years, that there's going to be a 5% increase over the next 3 or 4 years. They have to make up a 20% funding gap, which has been put there by the lack of money which has come from central government and the increase of prices caused by inflation. If we want the same level of services that we got last year in Tipperary, if we want them for the next 3 or 4 years, it will mean the rates will have to increase by 5%. And I think we need to be honest with businesses about that, because the one thing the businesses need, is they need certainty. Nobody wants a business to have to pay increased rates. Nobody wants to pay increased tax. But the self-same parties had no issue putting up local property tax on every single homeowner in the county for the next 3 years, while now trying to pretend that they're trying to save money for businesses. The things that cost more, the government are paying less. They bought an election, they threw out a huge amount of money in the last couple of years to make sure they did, and are now trying to recoup that. And they're doing that from business people which are struggling and are at the pain of the collar. But at least be honest about it, which they're not being.
So there's a time of reflection then, obviously, and we're talking about, is it next Friday? Next Friday we're going to look at this again?
To be honest, friend, I haven't got any indication of when the next meeting is on. If they did say we would adjourn the meeting until next Friday, so I'm not sure. Is it going to be on Friday? I'm not sure what changes are going to be made to the budget. We certainly haven't been given that since the weekend. So are we going to go back in next Friday and vote on the same budgets that we could have voted on last Friday?
Well, my reading of it is you'll be looking at a new budget document of sorts. So I presume there will be changes there somewhere.
Well, I think we'll have to look at a new budget document of sorts. Otherwise, what was the point in adjourning the meeting last Friday at all? I mean, we've had 2 months to discuss this. And I think really what's annoying me, Fran, is the idea that Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael think that nobody else could have any input into the budget. When they decided that they weren't happy with it, well, they put their, they took their ties and off they went out the door again. There's 40 councillors on the council. Every single one of us have a responsibility to stand up for people in Tipperary. Every single one of us have a responsibility to take hard decisions. I know some of the decisions that I make and some of the stances I have are not going to be popular, Fran. But yes, I'm consistently being called populist by Fine Gael. And here they are trying to pull a populist trick here. Oh, we're not going to put extra costs on business. But the reality is they are, and they're going to do it for the next 3 or 4 years.
All right, Liam, thanks for talking to us today. That's Councillor Liam Browne. Let's go to Carrick-on-Shore now and Councillor Davy Dunne. Good morning to you, Davy.
Morning, Frank. Morning to your listeners.
Good to talk to you today. Thanks for coming on with us. Just give me your view on this. You were on Zoom. You said you really didn't have a clue what was going on during this meeting.
No, Liam gave some sort of an outtake of what happened, but I don't know how he could give a full intake when he wasn't at the meeting, only on Zoom like myself. But the meeting was delayed. So just to give people the background, I work nights, as you all know by now, and I finished at 4 o'clock in the morning and went from Waterford to Carrick, got home at 4:30, went to bed and got up at 10 o'clock for the meeting. The meeting was delayed starting. There was some sort of talks going on between Fine Gael and the officials. So the meeting was delayed starting. And then the meeting was delayed at dinner time again for some sort of more talks that seemed to be going on. Again, we could only see what's going on from Zoom. I couldn't make it to Nina because I was no way I was going to be fit to travel to get to Nina to the meeting. And unfortunately, I couldn't get time off work to attend the meeting. So then at the end of the meeting, Liam was correct in what he said. So they look for an adjournment. But I think standing orders were broken before that, because it says in standing orders that you have to suspend standing orders if the meeting goes on longer than 2 o'clock. So the meeting did go on longer than 2 o'clock, and they never suspended standing orders. So I think they were a breach of standing orders. And I was trying to get a point of clarification there, and I asked on several occasions, could they clarify the situation?
And sorry, Davy, what exactly would that mean in terms of breaching?
So basically, the meeting finishes, and you start a kind of new meeting. So you suspend standing order. So you have to abide by the rules. So if you don't abide by the rules, I think Niall Dennehy said it online. So we were talking among each other. Liam, Niall Dennehy, Anne-Marie Ryan China, there was Marie Murphy was online, there was other councillors online, and we were discussing, and Niall was adamant that they were in breach of standing orders. So the adjournment was called for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and it went on for 35 minutes. So we were getting very frustrated online. We were trying to ask the meetings administrator what was going on. We were trying to ask the Carroll what was going on, and nobody was telling us. And then when they came back, Michael Smith stood up and gave before that, Michael Smith, as Liam correctly said, that he wanted all these changes. So I questioned that, because you can't just change something. You have to say what area you're going to take it out of. So if there's a cost involved in the change that you're making, you have to find out where you're going to get that money. And that wasn't explained to us. So now we're 4.5 hours, we're from 10 o'clock to 4:30, and we're none the wiser of what was going on. So how could anyone responsibly vote on a situation where they didn't know what was going on? So I thought the best logic, and I didn't come up with the line. I give credit to Andy Maloney. Andy Maloney sent a text message into the. You can talk to each other when you're online through Messenger. He sent a message to say that should we not look for an adjournment and come back next Friday and sort it all out, because there's mistakes going to be made here. And that's what my fear was. We'd end up voting for something that we didn't know what it was about. There was something about rural lights for 100,000. I didn't know what that meant. There was, as Liam said, there was
that's the community lighting scheme that Michael Smith was
proposing.
I
didn't know what it meant. I didn't know who was going to benefit from it. Was it going to be divided up into the 5 districts? Was it going to be, just for one district? I just didn't know, and I just said this is the best thing, because we need it all to take stock at this stage and then come back and have a look at this. But we've not got anything from the officials to say when the meeting is on. We've got nothing to say, no document to say what's going to be voted on if this meeting is on Friday. At least we need 3 days' notice for that to go through what's been suggested and how it's going to impact people. But the be-all and end-all of this is every councillor, Liam Browne, myself, anyone else that's elected as 40 of us, we're being treated like second-class citizens by the 2 major parties. They never once asked us for our opinion on the budget. They never once asked us, would we vote for the budget? The officials asked us about the budget, and they explained to us they didn't ask us to vote for the budget. They said the importance of passing a budget, and that if the budget wasn't passed, there could be cuts to services. That was explained to us. But at the end of the day, the 3 parties, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and Labour Party, even though they have only 3 councillors, they're involved in the fact it's their responsibility to pass a budget. They couldn't pass the budget. They were afraid to put it to a vote in case the budget wouldn't pass, and they'd have egg on their face. They're the ones that get all the chairs. They get all the plum jobs, and that's what they form a pact. Whereas we looked for the De Hunt system years ago, in 2014, when we looked for the De Hunt system, where everyone would be treated equally, like they do in Carroll. Each person, no matter what party, independent they are, they get a chair. And we pass budgets, and we do everything, and we do it on a collaborative approach. So everyone is treated equally. And that's, to me, called me about everything. And I know the businesses are there, and they're scratching their head trying to say, what's going on, lads? Are you putting up rates? Are you not putting up rates? Or what are you doing? And what are we getting for them? And that's the most important thing here.
Yeah, well, I'm sure they're really scratching their head when they heard that conversation with Liam Browne this morning, that we could be looking at 5% every year for the term of this government, Davy, at this point.
We are going to be looking for 5%. We have to be honest with people. And I feel it's very unfair on business not to tell them. It was 5% last year. Michael Murphy refused to pass the 5% rate increase, and he went on to be a TD. And the governments are starving the councils with funding. They're starving the councils of funding, and that's the biggest thing here. And at least Tom Atkin was right in what he said. The government are starving them, and they're putting the cost of businesses onto people. Brian, give us 1 second. I'll just turn off the alarm.
All right, no problem. We're talking to Councillor Davy Dunne there in Cllrs. We're making reference to what went down at that council meeting last Friday. I think Davy is back to us now.
I'm back now.
Davy, so what about next Friday then? Is that what we're looking at? And what are we looking at then? Will there be a new document? What's going to happen there?
I'm hoping that we have a new document. But, Fran, I myself and Anne-Marie Ryan put in huge effort last year into finding savings and tried to come up with ideas on how we could save money. And how we could do things differently, and we were laughed at. We were laughed at by a certain councillor, and I'm not mentioning his name because he's only get the right reply, and I'm not giving him airtime. So we were laughed at. So we said, no way, we're not going to do the same approach. We put hours and hours, weeks and weeks of work into that budget document last year. We presented the budget document to other councillors that we thought might be in favour of doing what we wanted to do, and got nowhere. It wasn't taken seriously at all. So I said, why should we now do all that work again to try pass the budget and get nothing for it, and get nothing for our constituents and the people that we represent? We asked for a simple thing: the vacant rates rebate. We were the first, and I think we're the only councillors in Sinn Féin to have proposed something that has brought in revenue into the council. 634,000 is after being brought in since 2020 to 2024. That's what's after being brought in. That's an extra charge on derelict buildings that are owned by big businesses that are left idle and no intention of doing anything with them. The small people are protected, the bigger ones are not protected, and they have to pay, and rightly so. And that's money that came into the council to alleviate pressure on business and to do other stuff. And no one is coming up with policies like that. And I would urge Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, if they're coming back Friday, come back with how they can save money to alleviate the pressures on businesses. And I ask them to do that open-heartedly and consult with us and respect our mandate.
All right, Davy, I must leave it there, but thanks for your time this morning. It's Sinn Féin Councillor Davy Dunne speaking to us from Carrick this morning. News and information is coming up.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Over half a century driving the people of Tipperary and surrounding areas with quality, reliable and economical vehicles, new and used. Call the sales team today to discuss your next car or van on 067 24111.
Thanks, Pat. Welcome back to the second hour of Tip Today. 1800 938 007. The text and WhatsApp 083 311 3311. Now, a couple of people on to us with the query, why can't councillors turn up in person instead of Zoom? They should all be there for such an important meeting. We also had a text in that goes, the most important meeting in the entire year is the budget meeting. It's one of our most important reserved functions. I understand both councillors work full time, but it would have been better if they were physically present at the budget meeting. There was a short delay at the 10 a.m. start, but the executives were not in a meeting with any councillors at that time, as it was stated by Councillor Dunne on the radio just now. The council staff were all present in the chamber when I arrived at 10 a.m. So that's in from one of our councillors, and we'll see if we can get that councillor on air with us, just to provide a bit of balance in the conversation there. 083 311 3311. Okay, lots more in on that, and we will get back to it. But right now it's time for this.
Financial advice with FOH Financial Limited. Tried, trusted and experienced advice. See FOH.ie. FOH Financial Limited is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Francis O'Hanlon from FOH is with me in studio. Francis, good morning. Hi, to Fran. You. And guess what? It's all about pensions, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think
all
this is probably, it was a follow-up to our previous session. So as you, our listeners know, we like to listen and we like to answer the questions that people take the time to send in. So that's really kind of following up. So it just shows, I suppose, the interest and questions around pensions. That is the bog that pensions are in Ireland.
And of course the big conversation is auto-enrolment now at this point, isn't it? You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's go with question number one then. Can a government employee opt into this new system?
So I presume new system, they're talking about the auto-enrolment. Yes. So I'd say no, unless they are not a member of a public service pension scheme. You would expect if they're working for a government, in a government job, that they would be in a public service pension scheme. So it's unlikely they'd be auto-enrolled. But if, say, maybe they're temporary or not yet permanent, excuse me, it may well be that the public service department decide, well, we're going to have to automatically put them into the pension scheme immediately. That's no different to any employer. If it's a thing that they don't, then they're auto-enrolled. So it's one or the other.
Even with the government department?
Yeah, so I would think it's unlikely that a government department wouldn't make an employee give them an immediate access to pension. So let's leave the government department out of it for a moment. Let's look at an employer. If I had somebody starting in the morning, even if they're on a probationary period, it doesn't matter. Even if they're not permanent, it doesn't matter. From January, they must have a pension, either be a member of an occupational pension scheme or be auto-enrolled. Okay? So if that goes for the government as well, we hope, right? That their staff member, even if they're temporary or whatever it be, will have to be in a pension scheme from January, be that the public service pension scheme or be it that they make a decision to auto-enroll them. I can't speak for the government. Thankfully, I'm not speaking for the government.
Right, it's just, this hasn't emerged before, that notion that a government department might use auto-enrollment.
Yeah, well, the rules are the rules. They're employees, so why wouldn't it apply to them? Now, again, that'll have to be checked with the government department, because all I'm speaking about here is the auto-enrollment, my understanding of it, and my understanding of it as an employer. Okay, so for me, And for FOH Financial Limited staff, it doesn't apply. We have a group pension scheme for our staff.
Yes.
So therefore, what happened was revenue, the information revenue took from the November payroll feeds into the auto enrolment system into that department. They can see that all the staff that I have on payroll have a pension contribution paid by FOH Financial Limited, and the employee is also making a pension contribution. So therefore there's no need for auto enrolment for that particular company or business. If it is a thing that there is a company or a business out there and they don't have a pension scheme, then what happens is the payroll from November is fed in via revenue into the future fund or the auto enrolment scheme. It's seen that there's no pension scheme in place, and therefore all of those staff will be automatically auto enrolled come 1st of January.
Interesting.
So
yeah.
the employer is key here.
And if a company hasn't moved on this so far in some sort of fashion, it's a bit late.
Yeah,
isn't
they
it?
need to move,
do so really
because
quickly.
the hub opens today. So this is not all well. This is happening from the 1st of January.
And
this
there
is
are
in
fines
place.
going to be in
Oh,
place.
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
So, I mean, employers need to grasp this and they need to go and look. And it, again, I'm not keeping hands off. I'm speaking kind of with two hats here. One is an employer.
Yeah.
You know, we're okay. We have our staff pension scheme, so it's not an issue for us. But as a financial advisor, it's not, auto enrolment is not something that we're involved in. Obviously, we have to be mindful of it for our, I suppose, clients, be they employees or be they employers, right? But, you know, there is responsibilities upon the employer. They need to wake up and smell the coffee or the...
Or whatever. Our second question then, Francis, on pensions. A person who has a limited company and is the only person in the company, do they have to be auto-enrolled?
So, no, technically, as long as they're Class S for PRSI, because they're technically self-employed.
Yes.
As a company director. But if you're registered for some reason as Class A, as an employee, then yes, the same rules apply. But it's my understanding that if you're under PRSI Class S, that it won't apply. Okay? Now, can I just add here? First of all, why does this person not have a pension? I might just throw that out there as a company director. But let's say that they do. And let's say normally with a limited company, the company is paying the contribution. That must show on your payslip. Just okay. You know, it needs to show on your director, on your payslip on a monthly basis that the limited company is paying a pension contribution for you. So again, just, I suppose, answer what I was asked. No requirement under PRSI, as long as they are PRSI Class S, because they're technically self-employed.
Okay. On to our third question then, with respect to encouraging people to invest in a very volatile environment in the whole pension uncertainty of benefit, would it not make sense for the government to guarantee the end benefit? So they had no bother backing the banks during the bailout with the people's money. Well, whatever about the last statement, which is true, what about the other part of it? Yeah,
I mean, I hear you, but how likely is that? I mean, that would be the best defined benefit scheme in the world. So as a taxpayer, I'd say no. Yeah. You know, how could it possibly be? Don't forget, they can't pay for the guaranteed scheme that we already have, which is the state pension. I mean, how many times have we mentioned
Which is why we have auto-enrollment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, lovely idea, but
not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
Okay. What happens your pension if you die before 65? This is a very interesting question.
Yeah. And I can't give you, funny enough, I can't give you a straightforward answer, because this is pensions and it depends on the pension type, and it depends on whether you've accessed it or not. It depends on whether you are married. It depends on whether you're single. It depends on, you know, whether you have children and what age the children are. So just to give you an example, a PRSA, or, you know, that you haven't accessed yet, okay, that is still intact, and God forbid you die pre-access, then 100% of that is paid tax-free to your estate. But if it's a pension that you've accessed and you have a resulting ARF, an approved retirement fund, so that's after you retire, and let's say you accessed it at 60 and that you were married, and you pass away, that transfers as an ARF, an approved retirement fund, 100% to your spouse. Okay?
Okay.
If your spouse has predeceased you, that transfers to either your children or your estate. Now we move on to an annuity. Let's say you've accessed your pension, but, this could be the defined benefit question. But you've got an annuity, you just went that route where you got your cash, but you have a pension on the drip, as I call it. That's where pensions sometimes get lost, okay? It's the annuity, because it depends on when you did the annuity. Were you married, but it was done maybe on a single life basis? And if that's the case, it could possibly die with you. If it's a thing that is done through a defined benefit scheme in a company, they would probably be in tune with your marital status, okay? But that still doesn't mean... So say, for example, somebody has a DB payment and they're getting 30 grand a year, and there's a spouse benefit on it that in the event that they die, that 50% of it is paid to their spouse ongoing. If their spouse predeceases them and they've no children, or children that are of an age where they're dependent, could potentially be gone.
So it doesn't go into an estate or anything?
No. So that's the risks of annuities, and that's the risks of defined benefit pensions. And that's why sometimes people are saying, it's all right for you, you've got a defined benefit pension scheme. There are risks with everything. You need to be informed about everything and the pros and cons of everything when you're talking about pensions. So I told you it wasn't a straightforward answer. It really depends. But can I just say this? If you're in doubt, will you please check with either, your provider or a qualified financial advisor who knows what they're talking about when it comes to pensions, and make sure that you get the opinion or the decision in writing that it's there.
It's a bloody minefield, isn't it?
Keeps us busy.
Absolutely. The fifth question, I have a pension that I suspended 8 years ago. I was losing money. Now state pension coming in. What should I do?
So that depends on your employment status now, and it depends how old you are, and it depends on how much you're earning. If you're going to be enrolled in the auto enrolment, you can't transfer your old pension in. There's no facility to do that at the moment, and it doesn't even make sense. So you will have to access that separately down the line, which I think you should, because if you have your own pensions, you can possibly access them, depending on the type, anywhere from age 50 but maybe later 60 on, and you can leave them intact all the way to 75, where with auto enrolment you can't access it until you reach state pension age.
So what they paid in to this pension will gather interest then while it's sitting there dormant and something?
Yeah, on their own pensions, again, depending on who's advising them and depending on where they're invested and how well they're invested. So I suppose the big thing I want to ask here is, first of all, obviously I'm saying they need to seek advice from a financial advisor. Yeah. But I'm especially interested to know as to why their pension was losing money 8 years ago. Why? I don't like pensions losing money. Look, stuff happens and people go into very maybe specific or niche funds, and that could be a reason. But any fund worth its salt should have well recovered. I'd just like to know, 8 years ago was 2017.
Yeah.
It was well post crash. I just think there's so many.
I read something different today. I thought the person just couldn't afford the pension, and when they said they were losing money, so I'm not sure.
Look again, if they wanted to maybe come back to us and clarify
a little more information.
But really, I suppose the thing is, they can't move their existing pension into the auto enrolment, nor should they.
All right, okay.
Okay, even if they could.
Another one for you then, Francis. I'm 57. I started a pension 3 years ago. I pay 35% into it from my wages. Can I pay more into it as I'm taxed at 40% and my husband earns as well? That's in from Deirdre.
So, Deirdre, at 57, assuming you are an employee or even a sole trader, the maximum you can put into a pension is 35% of your salary. This is based on her age. Up to a maximum of 115,000 of a salary. Okay, so if you're earning 150, you can only put in 35% of 115. Okay, if you are a director of a limited company, that's a different matter. okay? Then you can put in an awful lot more into pension if you're a limited company director. Or you can speak to your employer. Possibly your employer is putting in a certain level, but it might be that you could negotiate as part of your package that your employer might start putting in more, but you are restricted. If you are an employee or if you are a sole trader, you are restricted to putting in 35% of 115,000. Maybe look at what extra maybe your husband could do relative, in relation to his salary, I would say.
I'm 39. Should I start a pension? I can guess what the answer to this is going to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, based on what you can afford, start small and build. Because sometimes people at 39, they might have, different things going on. It could be small children, mortgages, whatever it be, travelling, education, who knows. So I would just say start small and build. Of course, if you are PAYE earning more than 20k, less than 23, and you're under 60, you have no choice from January 26. But please don't leave it down to no choice. Seek advice and start a pension / retirement plan because you choose to, not because you are made to. I think that's what I'm saying here.
All right. Started working paying tax from 1976, but when we were told of the collapse in 2007-2008, our pension paid into it for years was wiped out by the government. That comes in from Liam.
I don't know. And again, I just want that we read this out because I don't want people to say, oh, they never read out. I just don't understand how the government...
Some of the semi-state pensions were interfered with at that stage, right, weren't they?
Yeah, maybe adjusted. I just don't understand wiped out. So maybe again, Liam,
maybe a little more
if you want to come
information
back, I just can't comment when I don't really know the full extent of what you're talking about. But again, I'd be interested to hear. Every day is a learning day as well. Just to hear people's experiences are important.
That's for sure. If I want to close my pension in England, how do I go about creating one in Ireland?
Very similar question to this before, but again, it's very relative, I suppose, to an awful lot of people who lived and worked in the UK. I would say, firstly, what is closed? Don't close your pension in England until you speak to an Irish or UK advisor, or your pension could end up in trouble tax-wise. You have to be careful how you bring it back. You can then possibly move your UK pension over here, if that's best advice, if you want, after you seek advice. And you can leave it in a pension pot, intact basically, called a buyout bond or a personal retirement bond. And you can access it down the line, potentially after 50. But again, you have to be careful about the amount of years that you're back before you access it. And then depending on your income, etc. here, you can set up an Irish pension, be that a PRSA or via work, again, after you seek advice.
All right, okay. Lots coming into us then. Because it's about auto-enrolment, can I just throw a couple of small things at you? Fran, our company started a pension last week, putting a 1% to avoid the auto-enrolment. Can they do that, putting in 1%?
I think maybe have a look at the news today. I think the government are already stepping up, saying they're going to change legislation. Now, there's a bit of pushback against this, saying that some employers are setting up pensions with minimum amounts to, and I'm just reading this as per this morning, avoid auto-enrolment. But it's my understanding that there will be minimum, as it is now, that it must be kind of aligned to what the auto-enrolment scheme is. But again, I would say watch this space. 1% would seem low to me for a group pension scheme. But again,
all right. Okay.
Every case is different. And I would just say watch this space. I think you're going to see legislation changing to, and again, difficult, compel employers, if they have a group pension scheme, to be paying in minimum amounts so that it's not avoiding what their obligation is. We'll put it that way.
All right. Today is the 1st of December then. Christmas almost upon us. Can you believe, Francis? The most expensive time of the year.
Oh, absolutely. And again, every year we say this, Fran, we're just saying, please, you are not feeding the nation, the province, the country. You know, just be mindful of what you're doing. Make your own list. Check it twice, check it 3 times. You know, just try and budget yourself and try and stick to it. I would say, again, be really careful how you spend your money. How, ideally, please don't borrow if you can avoid it. But again, that's easy to say. Sometimes people have to. But just be careful how you borrow. Be smart about that. Be mindful of the interest that you're paying. If you're putting it on a credit card, if you're not getting rid of it within a very short period of time, then you maybe need to consider, should that have been on a term loan? And if you're doing it on a term loan, Christmas comes every year, right? So you need to be mindful as to when you're clearing it off, how long the time frame. Please be careful about kind of buy now, pay later schemes that are out there.
They've become rather popular over the last few years,
popular,
haven't they? Yeah.
Because, of course, it's easy. But just be careful. There's no such thing as a free lunch, right? It might be that you're paying more through a particular company, brand or website because of this facility. And it's kind of limiting your choice potentially, and you could be paying more for the goods. Furthermore, if it's a thing that you don't pay on time or when you were supposed to, you could be getting into higher interest rates, 39.7% APR I saw out there. And the other thing is that please be mindful. Just if it's a thing that you stumble in these kind of contracts, you can damage your credit rating. Some people don't realise that. Because the information, if you've more than €500, it transfers to the central credit register. So please be careful.
All right. Francis, always good to see you, and thanks very much, and a happy Christmas to you and all of
same
your
to you.
team as well,
please God, see you all in the new year.
All right, we look forward
Happy
to
Christmas.
it. Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much indeed, Francis. That's Francis O'Hanlon there of FOH Finance in Clonmel. All right, we'll take a break, back with some global news in just a moment.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, puck on. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Welcome back, and it's time to have a look at what's happening globally, and glad to be joined as usual by Thomas Conway of the Nina Guardian. Good morning to you, Thomas.
Good morning, Frank.
And good to see you today. Ahead of Mr. Zelensky's visit to Ireland, we're going to speak about that corruption scandal that cost him his top aide, his chief of staff, and a personal friend, obviously.
Andrei Yermak, indeed, a very close friend. They used to go to the gym together. He's said to have an almost mystical influence over Zelensky. They were that close. Their lives were intertwined, and they developed a friendship, I think, in show business. They were both in show business. Zelensky, obviously, an actor, a comedian. Yeah. He was a lawyer of some sort, and he was appointed chief of staff in 2020 when Zelensky attained the presidency, and he has been at his side consistently throughout the invasion.
And the timing is really unfortunate because Mr. Yermak involved in the peace negotiations.
Yeah, just last Sunday we were watching him in those peace negotiations in Geneva, making statements alongside Rubio, and now he has decided to go. Effectively, I think he has been sacked. Essentially, his role was not tenable, and it all relates to a corruption scandal involving Ukraine's nuclear agency, or commercial. It's a commercial. It's a company called Energoatom. A kickback scheme. Kickbacks are illegal payments worth up to $100 million. Now, that is a staggering amount of money, particularly when you consider that Ukraine is struggling for finance on the front lines and that. You know, this money could be used in other ways.
And money pouring in from other countries into
Indeed, and it is an especially bad look. And, you know, we've had kind of a series of events in the past week. We had that US-Russian authored peace plan, which might be described as a Russian wish list. And I think one of the reasons that plan emerged was Vladimir Putin sensed that Zelensky is under pressure here. This corruption scandal, and corruption has plagued Ukraine historically in the past, but, it has come to bear on him now. Donald Trump is desperate for a deal. And Putin obviously attempted to exert his influence, and himself and Witkoff, or Kirill Dmitriev, a Russian advisor, and Witkoff hatched this 28-point plan, which emerged last week. Now, the Europeans tore it apart and put their own clauses in. It will be very interesting what the Russian response to that is. I saw again Rubio last night with the Ukrainian delegation in Miami in Florida. And, you know, the music was positive enough from there. But I suppose it is all contingent on what the Russians make of it and what their demands are.
And in terms of this corruption, I mean, is there any indication that it goes further than Zermak? I mean, it's very hard to believe that it will be just one man.
Yeah, it is likely to be. It seems pervasive, doesn't it? I mean,
is there any chance that Zelensky can be touched by this in some way?
I think he has been stained to a certain degree already, but if he is directly implicated, now it's... You know, it would be hard to see, but I mean, it really does damage his credibility. I mean, he has emerged as kind of this heroic wartime leader over the past few years, but this really damages his credibility at a time when war fatigue is rampant throughout Ukraine. The Ukrainian
so how is he viewed by his own people at this point?
There are mixed opinions. I think, you know, if there were an election tomorrow, the guy who many see as Zelensky's successor, perhaps, or the guy to replace him, is the current ambassador to the UK, the former head of the armed forces, Valery Zaluzny. Now, he was a wartime general, as I say, head of the armed forces, and he developed huge stature throughout the course of the war. Zelensky then, sidelined him and gave him the role of ambassador to the UK. He had a very interesting piece in the UK Telegraph yesterday, which was referenced by the US Senator Lindsey Graham, very close to Donald Trump, but essentially making demands like Ukraine must join NATO. And of course, Lindsey Graham said that is not, you know, feasible at this point.
I can't see how that could ever happen.
No. When you consider that is, I suppose, one of the root causes that Vladimir Putin, or the so-called root causes that he talks about.
The expansion of NATO.
The expansion of NATO. Now, I thought for a period last week when that plan was altered, well, maybe could they do a swap? Could you trade the Donbass region for NATO membership or something like that? But that's probably unworkable as well. The Europeans are, as I said, put forward new proposals. Zelensky is visiting Macron in Paris today before he comes to Ireland tomorrow. That will be a crucial meeting. There have been talks with Merz and Starmer as well, and those three are really the crucial forces from a European perspective.
And if I was to say to you, look into a crystal ball in terms of the attempt at a peace process here, well, I'm not hopeful about it, I have to say, Thomas. Are you?
Yeah, well, I was looking at the Russian economy over the past few days and it has built a fortress economy, a war economy, and wage growth is high, unemployment is low, and although sanctions on things like oil are biting, I guess, it has survived this far, and it will probably survive longer.
Well, Russian oil is still being bought.
It is, yeah, despite Trump did issue sanctions on two major oil companies, but Russian oil is still being bought. And Russia seems to have this infinite supply of soldiers, which is, in many ways, it's appalling because they're just thrown into the meat grinder. That's the strategy they use. It's called the meat grinder tactic. And they sacrifice these soldiers for minimal gains on the battlefield. But Ukraine does not have that endless supply of troops. And that is, and also Russia having earlier been on the wrong side of the drone war, Russia is now winning that drone war, and there's something like 70-80% of casualties on the front line are being inflicted by drones. Now that is staggering, because at the start of this war it was more of a conventional conflict where you had two armies at the front lines digging at each other. Now it's turned highly sophisticated. You have drones being used. And then I suppose you have all these Russian flight incursions into NATO airspace, Vladimir Putin kind of poking NATO and poking Europe, ships coming across our waters and things like that. I think it's very scary. But in terms of the prospects of a peace deal, you'd have to be sceptical.
All right, Tom, so let me take a break. We'll be back with more global news in just a moment.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puckon. Now is the time to pick up your next van. From the award-winning Peugeot partner van to the expert and the load-lugging Boxer van. We have big vans, high roof vans, long wheelbase vans. You'll find them all at Slattery's Garage Puckon. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Join the conversation in Tipperary. Contact us through Facebook, Twitter, or email tiptoday@tipfm.com.
And you're welcome back to our global news slot. And Thomas Conway is still with me. Can we move to what's happening in Venezuela at the moment there, and Mr. Trump's threats to Venezuela?
Threats on Truth Social, and you would not have wanted to be or have wanted to be in a plane above Venezuela yesterday afternoon, because he issued a very direct call on Truth Social that effectively Venezuelan airspace was closed. Consider it closed, he essentially said. And apparently he talked to the Venezuelan leader, Nicolas Maduro, who is a dictator, who did steal the last election. Apparently he talked with him in a phone call and they couldn't come to an agreement. But really, this whole crisis in Latin America, I think, boils down to two things. Trump and America want regime change in Venezuela. They want Maduro kicked out of power. He's a socialist, he's a left-wing socialist, and they are not okay with that. The second is Venezuela has the largest proven oil resources, or one of the largest proven oil resources on the planet, and Trump is eager to get some of that coveted oil. And I suppose to enrich America with it. So I think those are the two motivations. You know, he says the motivation is the narco threat, the drugs that are apparently coming in from Venezuela. But all the statistics seem to suggest that those drug flows of cocaine and that don't really come from Venezuela. They come from Colombia and other Latin American countries. I've no doubt some of it comes from Venezuela to an extent.
So is that a cover for?
I think it looks like a cover, and I mean they have done all sorts of things. They've deployed the USS Gerald R. Ford to the region. That's the world's largest aircraft carrier. Thousands of troops and manpower and military infrastructure in the seas around Venezuela. And then you had the targeting of ships in the Pacific. Up to 80 killed, 20-something ships being targeted in what look for all the world like extrajudicial killings. So it's on a precipice as we stand. And although I should emphasise that Nicolas Maduro did steal the last election, or he is reported to have stolen the last election. And Venezuela would probably be a better country without him. I'm not sure this is the way to go about toppling him.
Of course, there is a precedent for this, where our American friends are concerned. What about the role of Congress in this? Have they any say in this?
Yeah, well, a number of representatives, Marjorie Taylor Greene being one of them, has said that Congress has the sole power to declare war. Chuck Schumer referenced that as well. And he's right there. But I mean, the Trump administration's ability to defy all these laws has been staggering to date. You know, they have just completely ignored the rule book in many respects, and they will probably unearth some, interpretation of presidential power that will allow them to strike. But if he goes into Venezuela, I'm not sure it will be well received by the American public, because as you mentioned there is precedent for foreign interventions in America, and
just a little, and the designation as well of the Cartel de los Soles,
yes.
As a foreign terrorist organisation.
Yeah, that gives the US broader powers to sanction it and to try to dismantle it, I guess.
Okay.
The Cartel de los Soles, Nicolas Maduro is said to be the head of that, and obviously the US wants to do everything in its power to effectively incinerate it, to dismantle it. So yeah, it has designated that a foreign terrorist organisation.
Well, let's move on to what's happening in the UK and of course their budget. Alarming stuff happening.
Yeah, and Britain is kind of in a state of economic decline. Like it remains the financial capital of Europe. London is the financial capital of Europe.
The city, as they say.
The city, indeed. But things like, and I was looking at it over the weekend, productivity, economic growth. What Britain sorely needs is economic growth. It needs to be an attractive place for investment, and of course it has not been since Brexit and the instability of the Brexit years. But last week Rachel Reeves unveiled a new budget, and by all accounts it probably wasn't radical enough, because Britain's budgetary finances need a radical overhaul. Now, she did things, I think it was a budget intended to please factions of her own Labour Party, the backbenchers in particular.
In terms of spending, is it?
In terms of spending. It's spent on things. Now, they did things like they abolished the 2-child benefit cap, which
I didn't even realise that was there.
Yeah, and apparently it was a bone of contention amongst, Labour peers, but that will probably go down well amongst the majority of people. It means if you have more than 2 children, obviously,
you get paid for each.
You will get paid for each of them, and I suppose it's only right and fair. But as I say, radical change is needed. She made a funny move on tax. She froze the tax bands until 2028, 2029. So that actually, while it doesn't explicitly, it creates a different impression, because what that actually is a tax rise, because the tax bands don't move with inflation, and people's salary is likely to increase and they'll move into a higher band of tax. So that's in an attempt to raise more money for the Exchequer.
But was it prudent, though? Was it a prudent budget?
It's hard to call it prudent. I'll put my economics hat on. It needs to restore. Britain needs to restore its credibility big time. I'll tell you what wasn't prudent: the fact that the Office for Budgetary Responsibility accidentally released the budget half an hour before she made the speech in the House of Commons. I mean, that was, while not a fatal error, it was a pretty humiliating error to make. So that is another aspect to it. But there was a bit of superficiality to it.
And in terms of the fight against reform, and I suppose to a lesser degree the Greens then, so right and left, where does the budget stand in that conversation?
I think it will cede more ground to both reform and the Greens, because I think, as I say, something radical is needed, and Labour have kind of put it off now, and people who are disenfranchised and disaffected will say, well, we're not getting the leadership we thought we would from Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves and co, and therefore we're going to float towards the extremes. We'll float towards Nigel Farage on the one side, or the Green Party and Zach Balansky, who is a very charming new leader of the Green Party. I saw him interviewed yesterday. He's a little bit like Zoran Mamdani in terms of where his politics comes from. But he will court voters to a greater extent even than the Lib Democrats and that. So, Britain and the Labour Party especially are in a poor place. The Conservatives, Kemi Badenoch came out yesterday and she lambasted the government for their policy failures, etc., etc. But she doesn't entirely convince me either. And the Conservatives, the polling reflects that.
Pope Leo, first foreign trip. What are you making of that? Because he's been quiet.
He's been quiet. I think he's engaging in a very delicate form of diplomacy. He was in Turkey.
The conservative aspect of the church and maybe the more progressive aspect.
Yeah, whereas Pope Francis was not afraid to speak his mind and was very much out there on issues. Pope Leo has played the game very carefully. I think he, to a certain extent, is focusing on uniting the church. But, as you say there, the conservative branch and the more liberal dimension of the church. He was in Turkey over the past few days, met with Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Turkey's president, and today and over the next few days he's in Lebanon, a country 1/3 of which has a Christian population. So there is quite an affiliation or a love for the church and for the Pope in Lebanon. And of course it's a country that has been scarred by war over the past few years, whether it's Israeli incursions and the war with Hezbollah. And Hezbollah even welcomed the Pope's presence over these next few days. But then you have economic crisis as well, and that awful explosion that happened in the port in 2020.
Dreadful, yeah. Dreadful. I remember the images of that so well. Before we wrap up then, what else have we got? Trump again paused all the asylum
this was in
decisions.
response to the shooting of those 2 National Guards in Washington last week, one of which has sadly died. Trump, of course, it was an Afghan immigrant who was said to be the shooter and
who had worked with the CIA.
In Afghanistan. So you would imagine he would have been vetted and stuff like that, but he obviously took a turn. The Trump administration has paused all asylum decisions and stopped issuing visas to Afghans following that shooting. So this just underlines the consequences of, doing anything wrong in America. He is one person. But this falls on the entire Afghan population in the US. Now, Mr. Trump has taken action against a lot of them and has vowed a crackdown on immigration from, he said, third world countries, developing countries. Hardline policies from the Trump administration, but that's nothing new.
To Indonesia there, and a catastrophe happening.
I have 300 people killed in the past week in flooding and landslides. It's gone up to above 400 now, above 400. More than 100 people are missing in Sumatra, which is a western islands. Heavy rains have deluged Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and it's all because of a tropical storm in a section or a passage of waterway known as the Malacca Strait. Some people will be familiar with it. But you have the army being brought out to join relief efforts. It probably hasn't got the news attention it's deserved because of everything else that's going on. But certainly it's a pretty torrid situation, and it's probably evidence of climate change to a degree.
Yeah, a lot of news though about that awful fire in Hong Kong as well, and that's ongoing in terms of investigation, isn't it?
And it has terrible echoes of the Grenfell Tower fire in London a couple of years ago, except it was greater in scale. It was a couple of tower blocks, and you have people who have been brought into custody. It killed at least 128 people. That death toll might even rise a little bit further.
Yeah, there's people still missing, isn't there?
There are people. There are plenty of people still missing. Yeah. 11 people arrested so far in corruption and negligence charges. Something to do with the cladding. There was this famous bamboo scaffolding that people will be familiar with when they see images of Hong Kong outside the skyscrapers, and that was said to have contributed to the inferno.
Yes, it was the quality of that cladding, I think, is in question. Is that?
Yeah,
is that
that's
it?
exactly it. And that there'll obviously be huge repercussions for that. Hong Kong obviously is in a difficult place politically, in the sense that it's effectively part of China, but has its own political system. But in fairness, I think a lot of people will get behind. I mean, this is a devastating tragedy, and the thing is, it probably could have been avoided.
Well, dreadful indeed. So much stuff going on around the world, Thomas. We could do hours of this every single week. Anyway, great to see you as always.
Thank
Thomas,
you, Frank.
and thanks very much indeed for that. That's Thomas Conway of the Nina Guardian and our global news slot. News and information's coming up.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. Over half a century driving the people of Tipperary and surrounding areas with quality, reliable and economical vehicles, new and used. Call the sales team today to discuss your next car or van on 067 24 111.
Thanks, Pat, and welcome back to the final hour of Tip Today. I was speaking to Angie McGrath in the first hour of the programme. We were speaking about grief and, difficulties around Christmas if you've lost somebody around that time. Kay was on and she said that lady is right about girls doing all the stuff for sick parents. I must say the boys are great for the driving for the hospital appointments. Also, she's right about life not being the same when both parents have passed on. Christmas is a very difficult time. Even the ads and the Christmas songs can make you cry, says Kate to us this morning. Thanks for that, Kate. in reference to what Thomas Conway was saying to us. Then Brian was on, and this is Brian's opinion now, by the way. And Brian says the Cartel de las Soles does not exist in Venezuela. It refers to arm patches worn by some of the previous Venezuelan military who had been recruited by the CIA to overthrow the government of Hugo Chavez. This is merely a cover story to legitimize a US coup to install that right-wing extremist who was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, says Brian. And that's Brian's opinion to us on 083 311 3311. Now, glad to be joined in the studio by our relationship expert, Susan O'Donoghue. Good morning to you, Susan.
Morning, Fran.
And it's good to see you today. You were talking to us about the cost of living and the impact it has, and I suppose the impact it has on us emotionally and where our mental health is concerned and all of that.
Yeah.
If you're under pressure financially, how difficult is that to deal with?
It can be extremely difficult, and it puts an extra layer. You're coming from your base layer there, then where it's about survival. And if we can't survive, sure, that's the first step, isn't it? Just to be able to have our basic needs met. So there's surveys show that a large majority of Irish people, 79%, the surveys are showing, report that the cost of living negatively affects their mental health, with 71% of employees citing that it's the main cause of stress and anxiety. So financial worries can be, you can be thinking about, oh my God, what's going to happen in the future, because some people really stress about what's going to happen in the future. Basic necessities like food, fuel, clothing, persistent worry, low mood and lack of sleep. If you're not sleeping, you need to be doing something around it. And I suppose this has affected all of us the last couple of years. You'd want to be really well off not to see the impact of some of this, So what it does is it reduces social and self-care activities like, say, meeting friends, going to the gym, taking care of your own self-care, like your appearance and stuff like that. And once that starts to dwindle, when you don't, have that little pep in your step around, I feel a bit healthier, I feel everything kind of goes downhill fairly fast, it can. So we really need to be watching ourselves on that. And the impact it's having on our young people is huge, isn't it? It's the difficulty with moving out from home, finding a house, it's the financial strain, it's feeling like, you're worse off than the previous years, than your than your parents or your grandparents. And when we look back on, say my grandparents, everybody was kind of communal. You had the turkeys, I had the sheep, you had the spuds, I had, it was kind of the sense of that. But everybody was on the same level. But they didn't have the same stresses, as in no housing. The pressure to achieve, comparisons, we're back to that again, yeah? The comparison against, next door is doing this, next door has that. Because they were all in the same boat. We're all pretty much, surviving, and that was it. So we didn't have that, but it's, it really puts huge pressure on people. The difficulty then of assessing healthcare, maybe, because maybe you can't afford to go to the dentist, you can't afford to get new glasses, you can't afford, it makes a huge impact on you, and all that chips away at you. So it's the increased demand then, like Jigsaw and Spun Out have seen a huge demand now for their services, and the limited access on professionals, if you want to go and talk to somebody, there is free ones, but not all of them are free, and then you have to consider the cost of that and how much that. So when you don't have money, it really impacts you. It really impacts your mental, your psychological and your physical health. And if your physical health starts to go, we know that we're not just one thing, that we're all your physical, your emotional, your social, everything. But it impacts your social life too. Because if I don't have money and, I can't go out and meet my friends for a coffee, or I can't go out and meet my friends for a sandwich, or whatever it is, right? For a pint, or whatever it is for a man, if they like to go out for their pints, or women like to go out for their pints, and you can't do that because you've no money. It's huge, isn't it? Your social aspect is gone then.
And when you hear that we're one of the best performing economies in the European Union, and, that we're doing so well fiscally on a countrywide scale, on a nationwide scale, does that play into this, that, you're struggling, but it seems like other people are doing extraordinarily well?
Yeah, of course it does. I think too that's the comparison thing, and that's a dangerous thing when we start to compare ourselves to others, because we are where we are, and it's how are we going to manage what we have. That's the most important thing, because when I lived in America, they used to say, I don't care what so-and-so thinks, they're not paying my mortgage. That was the attitude, right? So it's not a bad thing, because we need to separate out from what the other person has and what they're doing, and like if they're going on 15 holidays a year, or you know, they look like they're doing better off. We never know. We never know. They could be up to their eyeballs in debt. We don't know. We don't know what goes on for another. And we know that coming into Christmas is a really pressure time for people around money. It's huge. It like, I have never been a shopper. I don't like it. I just would prefer to hand people money for Christmas and be done with it. Yeah. It's not my thing. And then I feel like I'll get it wrong if I do buy something for them. I just think the pressure of it, and even the pressure of how much am I going to give somebody? You know, what's the right amount? What's the done thing at the moment? It gets ridiculous. Give what you can, and if you can't give, that's okay too. It's okay to say, you know what, I'm not in a position this year.
Yeah, of course. We were speaking to our financial advisor in the last hour, Francis O'Hanlon, and Francis is making the point that people get into such debt over Christmas just to have this perfect postcard Christmas, and then it's all forgotten about, but you still have the debt to pay back.
So it wasn't that perfect.
Yeah.
And like, just because, like, I know that they say money can't buy you everything, but it certainly helps if you have it, you know what I mean, if you have other issues going on. But the thing about it is you could have all the money in the world. You could have the picture postcard, and all the Christmas movies are out now, right? And I must say, sometimes I indulge in one or two of them just for a letdown time when I'm ironing or something. But like, it really, you know, makes us think that that's what's perfect. But is that what's perfect for me?
Yeah.
Or is that a false thing I'm doing to pretend I'm perfect? Does that make sense? Yeah, it's like, am I trying to imitate somebody else to make me feel like it's going to be perfect?
You end up doing that for the children, often, you know, or for the partner, whatever, but largely for the children. You're trying to make this sort of...
But what are we trying to do then? We're trying to control the situation. And we're back to that unconscious behaviour again, where you're defensive, where you're trying to control what's happening outside of you so that you'll feel better. Because there is a sense of that in it. You're not doing it for no reason. You're doing it for a sense that you'll feel better. You feel like you've done something good. So
that's very clever, because I would have thought, but we're doing this, and we're doing this heroically for the children. But you are doing
it's a
it
sense
for
of
yourself,
I feel better now because
I've provided for them. And
I've done my duty. Yeah, you feel like you have to reach the comparison thing again to what your parents maybe instilled in you around how you're the carer and you're the one who should be doing this. So like, it's always back to ourselves. We never do anything for no reason. There's always a reason.
And if you are struggling a bit financially, is it possible at all to compartmentalise a portion of your day which is left aside from those concerns?
100%.
Now, I know that's very hard to do, but is that a possibility?
It's practice, right? It's practice, and it's becoming more conscious of what's happening for you. It's being able to understand and recognise that, you know what, maybe I am doing this just to make myself feel better after Christmas, that I have provided, and I'll feel better when I think I'm up with the Joneses. But it's a very short-lived kind of satisfaction.
Yes.
You know, the real satisfaction is in knowing that, you know, I've sat with my kids, I've held them on the couch, we've watched the Christmas movies, the fire was going, you know, we bought whatever, you know what I mean, had whatever potatoes or whatever it is your kids like, you know, to cuddle into, or popcorn or whatever you do. That kind of sense of that, or that I went for a walk with the dog with the lads. It doesn't have to be, you know, it's picture perfect like it is, because that's not real. That's not picture perfect. We're back to the old social media and all that kind of stuff again, where people throw out these photos like everything's peachy in the garden, and meanwhile back at the ranch everything's in tatters. And we're all trying to keep the boat afloat. I'm exhausted trying to do my part, and everybody else is exhausted trying to, I suppose, fit in to my part. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
No expectations. Yeah,
but you see, the other people with you have expectations of you. You know, if you're the provider.
But this is because you've set that goal. You've set it up, So how now am I going to say, what's my need in this? How am I going to take care of myself? And let your kids see you do that, because that's the best Christmas present you'll ever give them, because they'll learn how to do it for themselves.
Right, so would you tell them up front and say, look, this year finances are a little tight?
100%.
You would have that conversation with them?
Not a problem. If I thought that they were going, ma'am, and like, it's different if they're smallies, because generally you could get them a box and they're happy.
Yeah, I know.
But when they get to a certain age, they're looking for phones and they're looking for whatever they're looking at all the electronic stuff, and it's huge money. It's not like, I don't know how much a PlayStation is anymore because I'm gone past that period, but I'm sure they're €500 like for a play.
Must be all day long.
Crazy money. Yeah. So when my lads were the age of those kind of things, and whatever they were at the time, €300 or €400, I'd say to them, here's this amount of money. And there was two in the family that were mad into that kind of stuff. I'd give them whatever it was, €100 each for Christmas, and then I'd say to them, now, whatever else money you get, you can pool your money and you can buy it. That was the way I did it. Now, obviously, I'd buy him something small on the side as well because I'd like him to have something to open for Christmas Day. But that's how I did it. Right. And that way it instilled in them too that, this stuff is expensive. And
you must budget for yourself.
Exactly. And it's like my youngest lad said to me there a while ago, he said, I don't know what I was talking about. And he was talking about getting a car or doing something like that. And I said, that'll take a lot of saving. Yeah, he said, but nothing you ever got for free, you appreciate it. And I thought, whoa, that's very mature, because I didn't think that he thought like that. And there's my presumption again. But that's what I'm saying. That's the kind of stuff we want to instill in them. That, if you work and you put your money together and you think it out and you say, how am I going to manage this? And if I pool with somebody else, will I be able to? And then you have to have the respect for what you buy as well, that it's shared.
Yes.
Yeah, that's my way to do it now. But everybody, will find their own.
Yeah, but I mean, that's all very positive and very mature way to deal with it. But most people don't. You see, I think what's wrong with the current generation, if I might be so bold as to make a big sweeping statement now, is that we tried to give them what we didn't have.
100%.
And has that taken away from their resilience and maybe maybe even their ability to deal with money and budget?
100%. And you can't. There's no blame here anyway, or there's no shame. Look, we are where we are. We are where we need to be. We can always change things. That's the beauty about the brain. The brain is very malleable and it changes. Just because we've had a traumatic life or that we've, lived in terrible conditions doesn't mean that we can't move on from that. It certainly makes it more difficult, but it doesn't mean we can't move on from that. And I think it's the same with our children. We do wrap them in cotton wool a lot, for a lot of us. I'm not saying everybody, but I know myself, even on my first had a different experience than my third did, than my second did. That's one thing I know for sure. But you do learn as you go along, and there's no wrong or there's no right. We're doing our best, and that's all you can do.
And within a relationship, let's take a couple, for example. I presume the financial matters and money difficulties can be catastrophic, I would imagine, to relationships. Of
course they can. They can break down a relationship. And I think the most important thing in a relationship is communication. If I cannot sit with you and talk to you about money, and I would ask people today to even think about how their relationship is with money, can they even think about it? Not to mind say discuss it with somebody else, because it's a huge block, isn't it? It's like money was a dirty thing to talk about. Yeah. For a lot of us. And it was I suppose, the fear of going out and taking care of yourself with money. And I suppose in my early time with my husband, now we would have had that where we wouldn't have talked about money because it was kind of a taboo subject. But sure, if you don't talk about it, how are you going to know? And I know, like, when things got hard with the banks and all, the first thing people were advised to do was go to their bank and talk to them.
Yeah.
And it's the same in couple relationships. We need to be able to have the hard conversations without using the you statement. We need to be able to talk about ourselves and come from an I place. This is how I feel. This is what's going on for me. I'd love to hear your side of it. That's the only time you use the you word. It's not you're the one who's spending the money, you're the one who's you're in control, you can't take care of it. You get this back and forth if you go into it. So
of course, yeah. And do you ever get, I know it's an old-fashioned notion at this point, Susan, but that notion that the man is the provider. Nowadays you need two people paying mortgages and all that sort of thing, but that notion of masculinity as well tied up with, I'm the provider, maybe now I can't provide in the way I should, and does that all get very complex?
It does, of course, because I mean, if you were brought up in that culture, or you've that headspace where the man goes out and provides, which I'm sure a lot of people feel that they're obliged to do that, even though a lot of women do it now, and they also take care of the house as the man does.
Absolutely, yeah.
But there's that certain thing in it, because that's where we're coming from, and I spoke about this before, whereas the woman does have the children, the woman does have the ability to provide, to nurture the child until they're whatever amount of months, or six months or a year old. So it is kind of ingrained in us to a certain extent, and it can be devastating to think that you can't take care of your family. It's absolutely heartbreaking, right? And that does huge things to the person who feels that way. And then what happens is they feel that way, and whether they think it or not, and really, I suppose it's so unintentional, they pass it on to their kids. Their kids know something's out of whack. The kids know, because there's always a knowing there, isn't there? As a child, you know there's something wrong. And kids generally tend to blame themselves then. If it's not explained to them, if the kids aren't set down, if you're having financial difficulties, if you're struggling, and who isn't at certain times? I remember lots of times in my life where I had to go, that's it, I can't afford this, there's not a hope of getting it. But I'm from the old school where you don't borrow if you don't have the money. That's kind of the school I'm from, and that has served me well, in the sense of I haven't overdid a lot of things. But there's still been times where it's been really, really tight, and I've had to say to the lads, look, this is where it is now, we'll have to do this and this.
And if you're not open with them and they blame themselves down the road, then of course that is all
it's traumatic, isn't it? Then now this is where you come into say the unconsciousness. This is where I start to get my defensive behaviours. This is where I feel there's threats coming at me, because although there's nothing said in the house, maybe I know there's something wrong. Yeah, because that look, maybe you'll ask, can I go here or can I go there? You might be 10 years of age and your friends are going off somewhere, and it's kind of that look. You don't even have to say anything. They'd be better off if they set you down and said, look, this is the way it is at the moment. It won't always be like that, but it's just like this now.
But you're better off to have that conversation.
Because at least they know, because if they don't know, they'll make it up. And that's when you have the trauma and the stuff that we bring forward into adulthood, that every time then someone mentions money, we're allergic to hearing about it because it's a taboo subject. Yeah, so we don't want anything to be a taboo subject. We want to be able to talk about everything. So communication is always key.
Before we go on a slightly different topic, Angie McGrath spoke to us earlier on about grieving, and she kind of opened up a bit of a can of worms in some ways, and stating the truth, which is that largely it's the women, particularly if people are dying in your family, it's the women that are the carers. They're the 24/7 sort of appointed nurses at the time. The fellas come and go and sort of, bring stuff and do whatever driving is involved. But certainly it's the women's that take on that role. Would you agree with that? Because we've had an enormous amount of people reacting to that statement. I
would say research probably shows, and I'm sure it does, that women are the carers most of the time, but men are carers too. And I would say, there's a lot of men out there that are caring for people. But in general, I suppose it is the women who take on that role. And if I'm just presuming now that this comes from the whole thing around we're the nurturers. Yeah.
But do we, and I mean men, do we leave them to, if you know what I mean,
Okay, I'll say this, right? When my first child was born, right, she was rolled in cotton wool, right? I would say that, the man didn't get a look in, right? Because no one could do it better than me. That was the kind of, even though I didn't consciously think that, but that's how it felt, that this was my job to do this perfectly.
Yes.
And no mistakes. It makes me laugh now when I think about it, because sure, that's how we learn. But that was the rule. You just do this and do it right? And then I started reading books, and and that was a total rabbit hole altogether, because half the stuff in the book would just frighten you. You know what I mean? This can happen and that can happen. You better off not to go there. It's like going on Google. But I just feel that women do take on those caring roles because culturally that's what women did. I would say it's not as bad as it used to be, maybe. Like, I have seen a lot of men who step up and take care of people. And I would say that my hubby now he would do as much housework as I do, and that's because he's allowed to.
Yes. Okay. Right.
How's that sit?
No, I mean that's not what I thought you were going to say to me, but I think it's great.
Yeah, I think that when I am open and honest, and it's about communication again, and when I am able to say it to myself first, I'm overwhelmed here. I can't do it all, and say, is there any chance you could give me a hand? Right? Because it's not the norm for them now. Remember, most of the time we just take over.
Yeah, of course.
So if we don't have, I suppose, the honesty and openness with ourselves to tell ourselves that we need help, Yeah, and then to be able to have not that fear of asking, because it can be really threatening to ask for help, because you might be seen as, God, she's not able. Yeah,
yes.
Everyone else is doing it, and she's not. Do you know this kind of sense of that? I would say raising children or taking care of somebody, anybody, is one of the hardest jobs you'll ever do in your life. It's exhausting.
If people want to talk to you, Susan,
sure,
how can they do that?
No problem at all. It's 086 3676 256 or info@emotionalwellbeing.ie. Thanks very much, Fran.
Always good to see you. Thanks very much indeed for that, Susan. Just some breaking news for you. The architect and television presenter Hugh Wallace, best known to TV audiences as a long-serving judge on Home of the Year, he's passed away at the age of 60, and I'm kind of sorry to hear that. He was a guest on the programme several times, and most intelligent, bright fella, and a great conversationalist as well. So that's sad news. Just the age of 68 there, and that's Hugh Wallace, who has passed away. We'll take a break. Back in just a moment.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puckon. Now is the time to pick up your next van. From the award-winning Peugeot partner van to the expert and the load-lugging boxer van. We have big vans, high roof vans, long wheelbase vans. You'll find them all at Slattery's Garage Puckon. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puckon. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Gallivanting with Words by the author and comedian Colm O'Regan is a captivating tour of the phrases and the quirks and the wonderful oddities that make Hiberno English so special. So from Shakespearean echoes in We'll Have the Tay to old curses, May the devil make a ladder of your spine. I'm delighted to be joined now by Colm O'Regan himself. Good morning to you, Colm.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome indeed. And I really enjoyed the book, and it was my companion over the weekend. Despite the warnings, though, Hiberno English is not disappearing.
No, I see it as an optimistic book, that we talk about it way more than we used to, including me writing this book. And we see people using words on social media, which is often condemned for bringing in all sorts of homogenous language. But, you know, we're actually seeing Hiberno English in video, in Facebook comments, in interviews with people far more than even 30 years ago. So I'm kind of optimistic that there's still a lot of love for how we speak here, and there's a lot of life left in yet. The example I use is, do you remember the fella at the ploughing from North Cork talking about how much he loves slurry? And I was thinking that accent would not have been heard on television 30 years ago, you know, because we'd all have our Sunday best accents on. Whereas now it's more democratic, and you hear lots of different types of voices and language, and, you know, whether it's from any county in the world, whether it's Tip or Cork or wherever. So I'm optimistic.
Yeah, and it's a good thing that we're hearing those accents as well. But we are embracing the culture now, both on air, on radio and social media and all of that sort of thing. Would you agree with that, by the way? Are we, you know...
I would, yeah. I would call it almost like what I call the cultural revival. And I have to say, part of it is due to the famous Tip and Limerick men, Dunbelievables. I think they kind of started. John B. Keane would have done a bit of it, but in terms of what I remember, proper country accents and language being used was Dunbelievables on the Late Late Show. And actually, I have a special section in the book where I go around the different counties, and I pay a special tribute to John and Pat in the Tip county section, because they keep so much of Tip and that swathe of the country, Tip and Limerick language alive, including one of the things I loved finding out is, I don't know if your listeners are familiar with one of my favourite sketches of all time, which is A Simple Owl Salad, when Dan goes into the pub looking for the keys, and then he ends up staying for the whole day drinking whiskey. But famously, he's giving out about the black and tans, and they're saying, what's the black and tans doing? That poor boy abroad in the field. And 'tis the word abroad that was interesting. So Tip language, saying abroad like that, is preserving a meaning for abroad that is 600 or 700 years old in English, in standard English, which meant not in another country, but just over there. And I love that in Tipperary, you're keeping a bit of old, Middle English alive in a very living way, and Dunbelievable's helped for me with that anyway.
And of course, my old friends, the two Johnnies, continuing on in that same fashion too.
Two Johnnies are responsible for the lad. Every sentence ending, every sentence beginning and ending in lad. I think that's the lad revival has definitely come from the two lads, because it's lad. Geez, there was some stage last night, lad. There's a way more lads now than there was before them two started up, I think.
There is, and because I was skimming through, did you cover it all? I'm living in West Tip, and everything there is prefaced by fair, so something is fair good, and which is people find very unusual altogether. Have you come across that column?
I have. I've come across fair. There's a special section in the book on what are called intensifiers. So intensifiers is the 134,000 words that we use here to mean very. And we just, we like all over the country, we have a beautiful way of saying, so I don't think I might have forgotten fair, shame on me, but one of them is the quair from Wexford, and quairn from North Wexford, South Wicklow. So basically, you could have horrid good, somebody is quair nice, shocking nice, desperate. In fact, the nicer you are, the worse the intensifier used to describe you. Kilkenny apparently woeful. Something would be woeful bad.
Yeah.
But apparently you can be woeful nice. And I even heard somebody described, now I didn't see it in print, but I have heard somebody described as cruel nice. Right? Which, I mean, try and explain that to the Oxford English Dictionary lexicographer who's wandering past. It's just a lovely. I think we have fun with it here. So that's what the book's not a dictionary, because there is a brilliant dictionary by Terence Dolan of Hiberno English. As I say, it's a gallivant. It's a tour around.
Yeah.
And it's because I think Hiberno English, what I want it to be preserved, but it's not exclusive. Like, it's changing all the time, and words will come into it, and that's fine too. It's just I want people to write down, almost in their own families, the words that their parents used, and not just write it down in a Facebook comment, but write it down on a piece of paper and frame it.
Oh, I think it's so important.
We all have language.
And I beg your pardon, Colm, even the title, I mean, gallivanting with words. Gallivanting, for example, I didn't realise that comes from gallant in some way, does it?
Exactly, yeah. And, like gallivanting now, it's funny, like, I only ever heard gallivanting used in that there was a danger of too much gallivanting.
Yes, yes.
I've never heard the sentence, I think you should gallivant more, right? So even though it has a very glorious origin in gallant, and gallivanting was something a gentleman did, somebody who was charming, or somebody who was a good time person. But I'd like to bring back, I want to have the positive aspect of gallivanting. So it's a tour, it's a funny tour around the language.
There's laugh out loud moments. My favourite one has to be replacing the idea of "taw" and "kneel" at GAA matches with "twas" and "twasn't."
Yes,
that is
yeah.
Absolutely
for Hawkeye, yes.
"Twas" and "twasn't." I love that.
Yeah, because of course, "taw" is a weird word to use in one word. "Taw" kind of means is, but it doesn't say it is wide or it is a score. Do you know what I mean? So, and that the reason I was talking about that is because we do have there's a basic difference between English and Irish in how we say to be.
Yes.
If Tome is I am, but it's not all the I am. There's other ways of being of saying I am. So it's funny. Like, Irish probably has better ways of describing the phrase to be than we do. And that's why we often come up with I do be doing that, because we're still struggling with the transition from Irish to English.
Yeah, and you make another very interesting point, which is that, obviously, English spoken in Australia and America and Canada and the like as well. But we have a very, very special look at the English language here because of translation directly from a native tongue.
That's right, yeah. And I mean, the one that people often talk about is, like, we'd say, I'm after doing something, Tommy Shin Ayenov, and that's a direct translation. And I remember hearing a funny story about how the same phrase can mean two different things in standard English and Irish English, where two lads are on a J1 visa in America, and an American says to them, "Are you guys after some dinner?" And they say no, thinking he was asking them, have they just had their dinner? So he assumes that they don't want any dinner. So the upshot is the two lads don't get fed. So that translation issue leads to people suffering real hunger. So, and it's only when you're abroad that you hear sentences come out of your mouth and they sort of bounce around the room, and it's puzzling. So you might say, "Oh, I was giving out stink about this," yes. And people will go, "What? Do you have a problem with odour?" But like, Tuairteach Amach is giving out, and it's I like that there are things that are hidden in plain sight, and that's kind of what the book is as well too. It's not just here's the definitive Hiberno English, this is what you need to know. It's here's a way of thinking about it, and be curious. Look up the thing. There's a word you, Fran, or anyone of your listeners, that and you're being often curious about it. Well, look it up. Like, look up where, even in the Oxford English Dictionary, the most English place in the world, has nearly everything. And we can all get into it with our library cards. Some people have to pay subscription, but with a library card, you can go in and you'll trace back words as far as they go. They won't have everything, but it's, it's
you might
an
be
attitude, I think, a curiosity.
You might be surprised by some of it, Colm, because, for instance, the word crack. Now, I was certain that was sort of an Irish word that we imported into English, but the history of that is interesting, isn't it?
It is, and it's an example of how it's always good to do a bit of digging about a word. So crack is a North of English word.
I couldn't get over that.
Yeah, it means fun there, and it's like it's from the same. It can also be an exclamation and a hoarse shout, and so it came to mean fun there. It came over to Ireland, so you won't find CRAIC in early Irish text, nothing before 1960. And there's an ad in a newspaper, Ceol agus Crack, for advertising Ceol agus Crack, somewhere in the 1960s. Sean Bon Brannock had his radio show, and that promised the crack as well, again with CRAIC. But that's all very recent. The word crack predates it, and it's English. And the best way to know this kind of, or a best clue, like the Christy Moore song, The Crack Was 90.
Yeah.
The spelling of that is CRAC, not CRAIC, if you know what I mean. So and it's totally fine. I call it the Jack Charlton of Irish language because it's English.
We
embraced
embraced it.
Over.
I love it, yeah.
We practically put up a statue to it. But I think that's fine. I think that's just as interesting as if the word originated in Irish. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not about where it came from. I think it's about the journey it takes. And there's, like, for example, I don't know if the word gobshite, can I use that
sure
word
you
this
can,
hour?
yeah.
So it probably has Irish English origins in that gob is probably mouth, and shite is used in England and Ireland. But the first time it's written down anywhere is in the 1910s in US Navy slang.
Are you
meaning
serious?
an enlisted seaman. Now that doesn't mean that it isn't we made it our own, or that the parts of it aren't Irish English. But the first time anyone ever wrote it down was then. So that leads you to wonder, why didn't we write it down ourselves? Maybe we weren't using it. And so again, it's not like, this isn't about you can't have this word, that's our word, or that can't be Hiberno English, that came from somewhere else. No, it's inclusive. It's just about recognising where things came from. Like the word stocious, which I love. One of my favourite words for describing being drunk. But you couldn't find any Irish origin of that. But in Jamaican slang in London, stocious meant kind of outrageous, right? So maybe Irish immigrants picked it up there and brought it over. I don't know. I won't say for definite. But again, it's about asking the questions, about the curiosity, and not being like, oh no, this is definite, unless you were there at the time. It's about what's the most likely place a word came from. And I always find that interesting.
Well, the whole book is really, really interesting, and I got a great kick out of it. It's called Gallivanting with Words, How the Irish Speak the English. I presume it's in all of the usual bookstores, Colm?
It is, yeah. I'm hoping that it'll also be in the last minute panic petrol stations as well too.
Very good indeed.
That's where the rubber hits the road around Christmas Eve.
That's for sure. It would make a marvellous radio documentary or TV show. Have you anything like that in mind for it, do you think?
I used to have a radio show on RT called Colm O'Regan Wants a Word. I did one episode on Hiberno English. I am currently trying to develop a bit of a stage show based on it, or, kind of a comedy show. Yeah, I'm definitely interested in that kind of thing, podcast, all that kind of stuff. Because, I'm only scratching the surface. I'm not the expert, but I hope and introduce people to experts, that kind of way.
Yeah, well, you were very good on the radio today, so thanks very much, Colm. Great to talk to you. Thanks a lot.
Thank
you. Bye-bye, Jan. It's Colm O'Regan there, and his book is really, really a great giggle, and it would be a great stocking filler, as they say, for Christmas. Gallivanting with Words. We'll take a break, back in just a moment.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
If it matters to you, it matters to us. Call Tip Today on 1-800-938-007.
Mr. Menswear, located on Friar Street in Cashel, Abbey Street in Kerr, a €50 voucher going to TJ McMahon from Clonmel. Well done to you, TJ, and we'll have a €50 voucher to give away every single day this week. Now, for the past year and a half, members of the community and indeed the Dundrum Says No group have stood at the gates of Dundrum House Hotel protesting the change of the hotel accommodation there to iPass accommodation. But on Saturday, the group stood down from their post at the entrance, and Alison De Vere Hunt from the Dundrum Says No group joins me now. Good morning to you, Alison.
Good morning, Fran.
And good to talk to you today. It must have been a difficult day, Alison.
Yeah, very difficult day. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't be there on Saturday because I was working. But, it was. Look, I suppose 550 days, there's been a whirlwind of emotions. We thought it would last maybe, a couple of weeks at the time. We knew that we were in the right. We knew legally, and environmentally that we couldn't believe how this actually would continue for so long, and it's still, going on in Dundrum House Hotel. But I suppose, look, the government have gone rogue. We knew that. We said that a year ago. The Section 5 has been quashed, but they're carrying on regardless. So, look, I would wonder about insurance and et cetera, because I don't know how people can be housed with fire safety standards. There hasn't been anything in place since the year 2000 from anything that we've got from FOIs and, government, any details. It's all been the year 2000. I suppose, look, it's in an exchange recently, in the High Court, Kelly Smith, senior counsel for Arthur Cox, she was questioning Jeff Leo, and he confirmed that there was no lease ever signed between Brogan Capital Ventures and Upmasta. So Leo went on to agree that Upmasta is now trespassing on Dundrum House Hotel, and it still isn't, still hasn't been quashed. We had Micheál Martin last week in the Dáil, speaking to Matthew McGrath, saying the hotel hadn't been in use for over 7 years. That just wasn't the case. We're being completely gaslit. At that time, of 2022, there was TripAdvisor reviews left. One on the 3rd of October. I did fabulous hotel with great facilities. There was still 150 beds available at that time. And when they went down the route of the BOTBs, it was decided that, all bookings should be cancelled. And a member of staff was made to ring any golf societies who had overnight accommodation to tell them that there would be no accommodation provided. So, we're not being told the true story, and Micheál Martin doesn't either know the true story or isn't saying the true story. So really, look, I suppose another thing...
And sorry, Alison, was that the final straw when Micheál Martin spoke to Matty at that? Even though I noticed when Simon Harris answered Michael Murphy, it was a slightly different story.
It was. I wouldn't give Micheál Martin the credit of saying it was the last straw, because it certainly wasn't. I suppose, look, there was an incident there Friday night. The guards were there. They needed the people at the gates. They were able to give the licence plates of a break-in. Say there were 6 occupants headed into Dundrum, into the hotel to break in. So, look, personal safety was becoming a huge thing. There was a lot of cars stopping, putting their full lights on, facing it at the protest. There was a number of issues. So, look, I suppose personal safety, we're not willing to compromise that. We had given up our time, our energy. Emotionally, it's been a long battle. So really, at the end of the day, we have to go home to our families, and we want to be able to go home. We don't want any accidents. We don't want any, say, intimidation. So we felt that, we weren't going to allow that to happen. So we needed to leave the protest. So that's why one of the main reasons we disembarked. And look, it's not over, Fran.
Yeah.
It still is going in the court. There's still the whole issue over the wastewater treatment plant. Like, that just can't be ignored. Say an environmental impact assessment was not completed for the first Section 5, and it hasn't been completed for the second Section 5. So the material facts haven't changed in this case. We could be waiting on a long time, I should say, on Commissioner Planola to come back.
It'll be at least next March, will it not?
At least, and there's such a backlog. It could be March 2027 or even March 2028. We don't know. And there was a new wastewater treatment plant installed in 2023 without planning permission. Planning permission has still not been sought, and a warning letter was issued from the council on the 23rd of April, April this year. Enforcement proceedings have not been issued by the local authority since, so we don't know why they haven't enforced it. And even with the new wastewater treatment plant operational, emission limits are exceeding, say, all test results available, say, that we can get our hands on. So the new wastewater treatment system hasn't remedied the pollution. So I don't know.
And the organisation then, Dundrum says no group, will that continue on?
Yes, it will. We haven't gone away. We will continue to. Unfortunately, the only thing we cannot do now is monitor what's going on up.
Yes.
And that was, I suppose we were like a gatekeeper in the sense between the community and the hotel. If there was issues, if all the ambulance that were going in, all the Garda cars that were going in, everything was documented. So look, there's nobody there to do that now. But other than that, we're still a group that are strong. We're still a group that are, communicating with each other. So we're just waiting, I suppose, to see what will happen. At the moment, we're kind of, I suppose, in limbo because it should be shut down. The High Court has ruled. We were told once there would be a ruling in the High Court that it would, be closed down then if it ruled that the place wasn't suitable. That has been ruled, but that's been ignored. So I suppose we wait.
And did attitudes change to the people protesting over the time, Alison?
Yeah, I'd say, look, as people became more educated on what was going on, attitudes did change. You still have certain, people that are ignorant to it, but in general, no, attitudes did change. People got to, I suppose, some of the stuff that went on, people found it beggars belief. They couldn't believe that it was actually true, and then they heard so much about it, in the High Court. We weren't allowed to speak about it on the say airwaves. So now, when it's a lot of it has come to fruition that it's been, say, mentioned in the High Court, people just are in disbelief. People are devastated that it's come to this. We speak about the loss of 48 jobs. I believe it's much more than that. When I worked in Dundrum House Hotel, there was over 200 people employed. And, since it was taken over by, say, the operator Jeff Leo, that number dwindled and dwindled and dwindled. So the thing is, there's much more job losses than 48, really, if we were to look at it over that space of time. And when the hotel did have the fire in 2015, It was the kitchen and part of the ballroom that were damaged. And heating was kept on to preserve what was there, and then that was switched off. So really, would it been a protected structure? I was down there recently, Fran. It wouldn't do your heart good after spending so much time in my earlier days around every nook and cranny of the place, and being a member of the golf club myself for many years. It's tough to see it, in such disrepair, and we can just live and hope that the liquidators will sell it to somebody who will put it back into a hotel and, give it the time and care that the crows that came before it.
Of course, but there's such complexity around it, certainly from my reading of it, Alison, that could easily be years and years down the line.
It could, Fran, and the thing is, it shouldn't be. But it could be because of the powers that be having no desire to actually stand by the law of the land. Matthew McGrath has been at that protest since day one and stood with the people and brought it up countlessly in the Dáil, whether it be leaders' questions or in meetings. And he's been gaslit, as are the community of Dundrum, completely. To be honest, I don't think I've used the word gaslit so much in the last number of months. I've never seen anything like it. To be actually correct on something and that you're completely sidestepped on it, it's just absolutely, it's hard to believe. So we are in limbo because we do not know where this will end, because we do know right is on our side, but unfortunately that doesn't seem to matter at the moment.
All right, Alison, good to talk to you today, and thank you for coming on with me. Thank you.
Thanks
good
so
morning
much.
to you. And that's Alison De Vere Hunt speaking to us there of Dundrum. Says no. That's it from us for today. Leanne produced, Ellie looks after content. Stephen has the time tunnel on the lunchtime show, and I'll speak to you tomorrow. Look after yourselves, won't you? Bye-bye.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.